House resumes.
Government notices.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice that at a later stage of the proceedings, I will be taking the first stages of the bill shortly entitled the House of Assembly Elections Amendment Act 2026, standing in my name on the order paper. Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice that at a later stage of the proceedings, I'll be taking all three stages of the bill shortly entitled Registration of Electors Amendment Act 2026, standing in my name on the order paper. There's an error. If we can go back to the House of Assembly, is that simply says the first stages is a type 1 document. It should be all three stages.
Okay, all three stages.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Introduction of bills.
Your mic. Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill shortly entitled House of Assembly Elections Amendment Act 2026 be read a first time.
House of Assembly Election Amendment Act 2026.
The bill has been read a first time.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill shortly entitled the Registration of Electors Amendment Act 2026 be read a first time.
Mr. Speaker.
Registration of Electors Amendment Act 2026.
The bill has been read a first time.
Mr. Speaker, I move the second reading of the bill shortly entitled House of Assembly Elections Amendment 2026.
Motion.
Mr. Speaker, this is a straightforward amendment, I suggest, to the House of Assembly Elections Act. As was indicated, Mr. Speaker, earlier, this matter has been brought forward by the Electoral Commission. The circumstance in which the need for the amendment has arisen is that it was identified that if the amendment wasn't done, that there was a realistic possibility, indeed, a strong likelihood, almost an inevitability, that several people, several electors, who, I should say, eligible electors, would be disenfranchised in the impending Roseau North by-election. The circumstance in which the amendment, the need for the amendment arose, as I'm advised, is this, Mr. Speaker. The confirmation process that was provided for in the electoral modernization, electoral reform, take your choice process, which resulted last year in bills being passed in this House. The whole of that process was anticipating the confirmation exercise and a completion of that exercise, and then the legislation taking its full effect. However, as we are now aware, a circumstance arose where a by-election became necessary, and that was not provided for as part of the confirmation process. And as a result, Mr. Speaker, there were categories of electors who were in danger of not being able to exercise the franchise. For example, Mr. Speaker, one category identified was those who had been confirmed, but who may not, by the date of the election, receive an identification card. Both sides should have voter identification card, to use the proper term. I don't know whether that is actually likely to be the situation, but I think the Commission was anticipating that there were possibilities. One never knows what may happen in the process of the issuance of cards and so forth. And so to avoid that, that's one of the reasons. Another category, Mr. Speaker, is those who would have been on the list and those who are following the electoral process will recall that at the commencement of or at the enactment of the bills in March of last year, the Registration of Electors Act provided that the list that existed at that time would be the list subject to any deletions and other and additions, would be the list for any election that arose. So of course there may be people, there will be people on that list who have not confirmed, either because they have no intention of confirming, or because, as far as they're concerned, the confirmation process continues until October, so they may be saying, I have time, they have not yet confirmed. Should they be denied properly the ability to exercise the franchise if they're in the Rosen North constituency and want to vote? And obviously the answer is no, legally they're entitled to vote. So that's another category. In addition to that, Mr. Speaker, you have those people who may register between the period after the last supplement, because there are a number of different lists, after the last supplementary list, between that time and the issuance of the writ, and they would not automatically or expressly be able to vote. Of course, I think most right-minded people would say that clearly these people are entitled to vote and should be allowed to vote. But we know that we are in a society where sometimes some of us, for reasons that are not always clear to other people, choose not to be reasonable. So I guess the Commission was of the view, and I share their view, I must say, that to avoid that type of complication, the best thing to do is to ensure that the legislation is passed to ensure that all of those people who are entitled to vote will be able to vote. The unfortunate thing is, of course, it's not the most tidy of processes in the way it is being done. But I think, Mr. Speaker, I would say that in all the circumstances, it is the lesser of evils, if I can put it that way, that we have a process which is less tidy than I suspect all of us would like, but is clearer, so that by the time a writ is issued, by the time people have the need to exercise their franchise, everybody will know exactly what the rules are, and there should be less scope for confusion. I also know, Mr. Speaker, that many members of the public, or certainly a reasonable number, and certainly on the opposite side of the House, have expressed from time to time the desire for as many people as possible who are entitled to vote to be allowed to vote, even to the point of the call for the identifying documents to be made easier. So I suspect, Mr. Speaker, that this might be something that they find acceptable and contributing to that process of enabling people who are entitled to vote to do so with as little obstruction as possible. So, Mr. Speaker, the bill is really just 3 clauses. The first clause really is simply the citation, a short title, House of Assembly Elections Amendment Act 2026. The second clause is simply dealing with the interpretation of the act that is referred to in this bill is the House of Assembly Elections Act, that's the 2025 Act. And the substantive amendment, the amendment that we are concerned with today, is really at clause 3, which is a new section being inserted into the Act, and given the number 36A. And 36A is, the shoulder note indicates it's a transitional arrangement for voter identification cards. As the name suggests, or as the title suggests, it's transitional, and I will address that again shortly. But, Mr. Speaker, it's short, so I'll just read it out so that those who are listening and not here will be able to follow. 36A, subclause 1, notwithstanding sections 31 and 36, an elector whose name appears on the register applicable to an election shall not be refused a ballot solely because the elector has not been issued with or is unable to produce a voter identification card. Subclause 2, subject to subsections 3 and 4, an elector referred to in subsection 1 shall establish his identity and satisfy the presiding officer that he is the same person whose name appears in the register by producing A, his valid passport issued by the government of Dominica, B, his valid Dominica driver's license and his valid certificate of birth issued by the government of Dominica, C, his valid Social Security registration card issued by the Dominica Social Security and his valid certificate of birth issued by the government of Dominica, or D, his valid certificate of birth issued by the government of Dominica and a passport-sized photograph certified by a Justice of the Peace, Commissioner for Oaths, or Notary Public to be a true photograph of the elector. So, Mr. Speaker, it can be seen, looking at A to D, that generous provision is made for alternative means of an elector being able to satisfy the presiding officer that he or she is who he or she says that they are and matches up with the person who is entitled to vote. Obviously, the passport is obvious, it's a valid passport, the driver's license, but also a birth certificate, or thirdly, Social Security card and birth certificate. And if a person has none of those, then they have the alternative, or the further alternative, of producing a valid birth certificate and a passport-sized photograph certified by a Justice of the Peace. So, Mr. Speaker, there's comprehensive provision to ensure that all who wish to vote and are eligible to do so will have little difficulty in exercising that franchise. Mr. Speaker, there's also an amendment resultant from that by way of Form 12, which is the relevant form associated with this. And it really speaks for itself. I'm not going to read it, Mr. Speaker. It simply is headed House of Assembly Elections Act 2025, oath of person whose name appears in the register of electors and who is unable to produce his voter identification card during the transitional period. So those who fall within this category that we are talking about in the amendment will have to take this oath as well to subscribe and be on the record that they have sworn that they do not have a voter identification card or are otherwise unable to provide it for the purpose of receiving a ballot and being able to cast that ballot in the election. Mr. Speaker, I don't think that I am going to say anything further on this at this time. It's a straightforward amendment seeking to regularize and make the voting exercise easier for those who fall in the category of not having a voter identification card on the date of the election. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The bill is before the House for debate. Yes, Honorable Blackmore.
Mr. Speaker, I want to quickly support this bill before this Honorable House and to support the Attorney General in this presentation. And to say, Mr. Speaker, further to what the Honorable Attorney General said, I do not think when initially the election bills were presented to Parliament that the Attorney General, the Prime Minister, any member of the side had a crystal ball. And looking at the crystal ball, what did you see? That you saw that an election, a by-election, was going to be called in the Rosenhof constituency. I don't have a crystal ball. That when I actually doing that debate, and I cannot speak for the AG or the Prime Minister, but I can say that they fall in the same category. What is important, Mr. Speaker, is that this government is serious about the democratic process, and that is serious about safeguarding the rights of every voter who, under Section 6 of the election, the Registry of Elections Act, Mr. Speaker, of Election Act, is qualified to vote if his name is on the voters list when election is called. Now, if that change, as the Attorney General has just said, is not made, it means that people whose name on the voters list as qualified electors to vote, who will not have an ID card because the confirmation process is still in effect, will not be able to cast his or her vote. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, Section 13 obligates the Chief Election Officer and the Commission to adopt the existing list whenever an election is called. You cannot throw the list aside. So the AG had no crystal ball. Likewise, the Prime Minister. The bills are presented, enacted in Parliament in good faith, and the expectation then was the confirmation process would have been exercised by ensuring that everybody who wishes to confirm his name on the list or name on the list within that period, which actually terminates in October, would have done so. Now, what we did not see at the time is the by-election. But of course, it sets forth, therefore, in any election thereafter, that somebody must present a voter ID card. The voter ID card cannot be presented because the confirmation process is still ongoing. What I believe is important to understand and to underscore is the good faith of the government.
That's right.
And it's to respect the democratic process. And the government is saying by inference, therefore, that we're going to ensure that we go through the confirmation period without calling a general election, Mr. Speaker. And I think that is critical. That is important. Because I think that has to be underscored. Because I've been hearing a lot of hoopla, and I see Mr. Senator Parrish, who's fully ordained now. Understand? Fully ordained, Mr. Speaker. And yeah, I don't know to what. He knows to what, but he's fully ordained. All right? Because they were saying, I was saying, that if the Prime Minister makes a mistake and call the election before the conversion process, and everybody declaring the candidates, I'm seeing candidates some I never knew in my life, that's appearing, and that's all right, because they're preparing for election before the end of the confirmation period. I don't know. I'm not in the head of the Prime Minister, but I believe, Mr. Speaker, that demonstrates that the government is transparent. The government intends to respect the laws that the government have introduced into Parliament and enacted into Parliament. So I'm hoping that Mr. Paris will stand in support of these measures before this Honorable House, and that he should not sidetrack, notwithstanding the fact that he has been fully ordained into the fraternity for which he knows, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this measure before the Honorable House. It's a very simple measure, but I felt I wanted to add my voice. Yeah, you can stand up right. I will sit down for you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Senator Paris, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Members of Parliament, good afternoon. Mr. Speaker, this is a timely piece of legislation, and I would like to applaud, obviously, the Electoral Commission, who did not have a crystal ball at the time. Like Senator Blackmore and myself, to know that at this point in time we would be going through or having to deal with a by-election. Mr. Speaker, two things I want to point out, because Minister Blackmore mentioned the hoopla. You didn't translate that. What is hoopla? You have to translate that. But he didn't he mentioned what I assumed to be a lot of confusion around the process. But what I didn't hear from him is that an encouragement to people who are still not yet confirmed. The young people who have not taken the opportunity to go and register, to ensure that they themselves don't disenfranchise themselves, regardless of all the misinformation that is going on, to make sure that they can put themselves in a position to participate in the process. And I think that is something, Minister Blackmore, that we can all agree on. That regardless of this piece of legislation, making a serious effort to ensure that people are not disenfranchised in a situation that is unexpected, as they sometimes are. Making sure that everybody who is eligible to participate can participate. In spite of that, we should still be asking everyone to make sure that they get their names on the list, because, Mr. Speaker, this amendment is not forever. It comes to a close at the end of the confirmation period. It automatically disappears. And that is another point I wanted to make sure that the people of Dominica understands. Because with any little, as somebody said, I can't remember who, we are a gossiping nation. Yes. We are a gossiping nation. We like to make stories. There is a time limit on this. There's a time limit on this. And once the confirmation period is over and the Electoral Commission is able to give or to produce or to distribute all of the identification cards for voting, this no longer applies. So you would be required, as the law stipulates, to ensure that you present a voter's ID card once a general election is called. So, Mr. Speaker, of course, safeguarding the rights of people to make sure that they can participate eligibly in the process, and making sure that everybody who is eligible can participate without any type of hindrance is supported. Like the opposition leader said this morning, the opposition is always ready to support legislation and investments and actions that benefit the people of Dominica. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad to see that members of the House are idem that this is a straightforward and beneficial amendment and doesn't require a detailed debate. Mr. Speaker, I commend this bill to the House. With those few words, I resume my seat. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
This concludes the debate. It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled House of Assembly Election Amendment Act 2026 be read a second time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The bill will not be read a second time.
House of Assembly Election Amendment Act 2026.
The bill will now stand committed to a committee of the whole House to be considered clause by clause. the bill as amended to the House. I have to report that the bill shortly entitled House Assembly Elections Amendment Act 2026 passed the committee stage with a minor amendment. The question is that the report of the committee on the bill be adopted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Yes. Your mic? Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill shortly entitled House of Assembly Elections Amendment Act 2026 be read a third time and passed.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled House of Assembly Elections Amendment Act 2026 be read a third time and pass. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
House of Assembly Election Amendment Act 2026.
The bill has been read a third time and passed accordingly.
Mr. Speaker, I move the second reading of the bill shortly entitled Registration of Electors Amendment Act 2026.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, this is the second of the two bills before the House today to address issues that were identified in the existing legislation ahead of the impending by-election. In this instance, Mr. Speaker, the Registration of Electors Act is the act in question, and it is Section 14 of that act, and in particular, subsection 7. Subsection 7 of the Act, Mr. Speaker, reads, if a writ for an election is issued during the confirmation period, the register of electors to be used for that election shall be the register of electors published under Section 13, subsection 3, together with such monthly lists as have been published under the under subsection 1, and the supplementary lists last published under Section 17.2, full stop. This amendment, Mr. Speaker, goes on to add, obviously it's presented in a different format. This is presented in subparagraphs A, B, C, which is the end of the subsection 7 as currently drafted. But this amendment adds the word and then adds D and subsection 8. And D is as follows. The names of persons who have been registered since the publication of the last supplementary list up to and including the date of the issue of the writ. And then at sub-clause, which will be subsection 8, for the purposes of subsection 7, supplementary lists include supplementary lists revised and published in accordance with Section 17.2 and published in accordance with Section 17.4. Mr. Speaker, this was felt necessary because if one looks at the wording of subsection 7 as I initially read it, it refers to the monthly lists. Well, it talks about the register which is adopted upon enactment of the legislation. Then it talks about the monthly lists as have been published under subsection 1, and it also has the supplementary list last published under Section 17.2. And what was considered is that Section 17.2 refers to a supplementary list shall be revised by making such additions, and this is at subsection 4 of Section 17. Says the supplementary list shall be revised by making such additions thereto or removals therefrom as are authorized under this Act in relation to the preliminary register, and the list so revised shall be published in the Gazette, on the website of the Electoral Office, and in such other manner as may be prescribed and may be published in a newspaper widely circulated in Dominica. But you'll see, Mr. Speaker and members of the House, immediately that I was reading there subsection 4 of section 17. But if you noticed, when I read out the existing section 14 subsection 7, there's no reference to 17.4 in that. It's simply 17.2. And therefore, again, whilst it's right-minded people would think it's obvious that section 17.4 is also meant to be part of what is referred to in subsection 7, to avoid ambiguity, it was felt necessary to say it expressly, which is what is done in the subsection 8. And at D, where it deals with the names of persons who have been registered, that was referred to earlier, but that is obviously those people who register between the supplementary list and the writ. So they too will be captured and unable to vote without undue impediment. Mr. Speaker, it is as simple as that, really. And that I don't think it needs me to say anything more at this time. So, Mr. Speaker, with those words, I commend the bill to the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The bill is before the House for debate.
Deprive anybody of the opportunity to contribute. But I think, again, I'm grateful to members of the House on both sides for the cooperation and understanding and the acceptance that the bills that the Commission have commended to us for passage are appropriate, necessary, and improve the legislation to enable those who wish to exercise the franchise to do so. Mr. Speaker, with those few words, I commend the bill to the House. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
This concludes the debate. It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Registration of Electors Amendment Act 2026 be read a second time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The bill will now be read a second time.
Registration of Electors Amendment Act 2026.
The bill will now stand to the committee of the whole House. House resumes. I have to report that the bill shortly entitled Registration of Electors Amendment Act 2026 passed the committee stage without amendment. The question is that the report of the committee on the bill be adopted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill shortly entitled Registration of Electors Amendment Act 2026 be read a third time and passed.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Registration of Electors Amendment Act 2026 be read a third time and passed. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Registration of Electors Amendment Act 2026.
The bill has been read a third time and passed accordingly. So earlier today, we moved a motion so that we could suspend or some of the different standing orders we actually listed in order to allow for us to go through the Registration of Electors Amendment Act and also the House of Assembly Election Amendment Act 2026 as urgent matters as submitted by or recommended by the commission, the Electoral Commission, and we have done that. So now we resort back to our process of the debate on the budget. That's what we agreed to this morning, so we may proceed. And I recognize the Honorable Vince Henderson to proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I am very happy to rise in support of the budget of 2026-2027 as presented by the Minister of Finance. I want to begin by expressing condolences to the government and people of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela on behalf of the government of Dominica for the damage wrought by 2 earthquakes in the northwest and central parts of Venezuela, with a death toll of about 6,000 to date and growing. We stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters of Venezuela. As true friends, they've always been here with us from 1978 and the establishment of our own political independence. First country to establish an embassy here in Dominica, and sometimes we forget that they also constructed the Simon Bolivar housing scheme in the 80s for the benefit of Dominicans in the stock farm area. And I do hope that at some point that we seek to bring more prominence to that generosity of the government and people of Venezuela as part of our history. I think we need to perhaps reestablish a big sign there or some symbol of appreciation. I recently discussed that with the Venezuelan ambassador when we had a memorial mass for the victims of the earthquake about a month ago. Mr. Speaker, I also want to take the opportunity to commend the Leader of the Opposition on the presentation. I have seen growth over the years that she has occupied that position, and I can finally bring her some joy by telling her, yes, I remember teaching you at school. And she always teased me about that because I just couldn't remember her that well. I remember her brother that well, but I think today I saw it. Yeah. but I also want to thank her for her endorsement of the budget. And at some point, I almost took her for the Minister of State in the Ministry of Finance, who was seeking to further explain the presentation by the Minister of Finance. But I must say, indeed, you acquitted yourself well, and I want to commend you for that. Because someone reminded me this morning I should be nice to you because I wasn't kind to you some years ago. I still don't believe that, but I must say. But here we are. Today, I just want to frame my contribution on the budget. Perhaps the road less traveled, I think people will be annoyed at me a bit, as they normally are. But I just want to use the opportunity to speak to some things that people don't normally like to hear. But I'm going to say them anyway. I want to focus on one of the key things. It's calling, and the Leader of the Opposition spoke about our resilience as a people. I want to begin by, really recognizing the resilience of the Dominican people and to thank them for the tireless efforts over decades having gone through so many challenges, and I don't want to be a historian like the member for the Salabia constituency. So I won't go back to those days of citrus and whether it was lime or coconuts or, I'll just stick on bananas. I will go in more recent times. But remember, we had a banana industry that peaked to $100 million revenue in 1988, sorry, 89, okay. We peaked to about $100 million a year. And then all of a sudden, by the 2000s, we saw the decline. And I remember being saddled with the responsibility of Minister of Agriculture in my youth. Fellows who may just there. But anyway, I'm still here. And we started back then. And we carried the last days of the banana industry until we absorbed the $37 million debt of the DBMC when we wound up the BMC. And we gave support to DAPEX. That's how DAPEX came about. So we went through that struggle. And a lot of people thought that, hey, Labo Day, we finished. But we didn't starve. We didn't die. We press on. We work hard. And we continue to develop. We continue to build a country. And then, when we started seeing our way, boom, we got hit by hurricanes, successive hurricanes. I remember Hurricane Dean at one point. I remember that around 2008, early some days. We had the little storms, but then we started being hit by hurricanes. Ophelia came, remember that freak storm kind of event, weather event. And then Tropical Storm Erika came. And then Hurricane Maria came. And then COVID came. I am touching those because people don't like to hear that. Oh, stop all you're saying hurricane about hurricane, and COVID. But I want to get that message across today. So, I want to take us back. In 2000 was a difficult time for us. We got in office. We came in at a time when the government could not pay its bills. And you remember the story about the computer broke down when people couldn't get their salaries? And salaries used to be on the 15th of the month. It was that bad. I was a teacher at the time. Well, just before 2000. And salaries were not being paid. We had all these challenges. Then by the time we got into office, we had to struggle now to deal with those challenges. And I want to give you some facts. And I heard the leader of the opposition also said that GDP and all these macroeconomic indicators, they don't put food on the shelves and things. And I don't know where we get that from. But I will use the quote of the late Prime Minister of the UK, Winston Churchill, when he said that democracy is the worst form of government, except when compared to the others that have been tried. It is the worst form of government, but it's the best thing we know. It is the best thing we know. So those macroeconomic indicators, they are the tools that we use to determine how a country is growing. And that is how we are measured, whether we like it or not. I spent years at the United Nations with my colleagues fighting for what is now called the multi-vulnerability index. Do you remember that, right? The MVIs. We pushed for that for years because we felt that those GDP and all this per capita stuff that they're talking about is not a good measure of the reality. But what we were seeking to do was to add vulnerability into those figures, those macroeconomic indicators. Because one simple event can just throw everything off. And we know that too well in Dominica. So, I'm sorry to tell you, but I have to talk about those macroeconomic figures. Because it is the accumulation of the revenue that people make, the money they make, the work they do, the fig and dashing they sell, the fish, everything that is added up by some statistician and economist, and then they come with this thing and they package it nicely and tell you that's what it is. Now, obviously, if you look at the Bahamas with a per capita income of, say, 30,000 US, I don't remember what the exact number is, you would think everybody in the Bahamas have plenty of money. This is not true. I mean, it is skewed. We know that, and that's why we keep fighting that. But it is a measure of how the country is doing. It is important to have those figures to tell that story. So, I will get to where we were in 2000. In 2000, we found ourselves in a very difficult time. And I was comparing some figures. You know, our revenue in 2000 was 205 million EC dollars for the whole country. The whole government, the whole thing put together, when we do the revenue that we get from taxes and duties and everything we collect, 205 million East Caribbean dollars. How much is it today? How much is it today? When I check what it is, it is much more, it's 405% more today. So I hear people talk about 26 years. I want to put this in context about this 26 years. We have actually grown our revenue by 405%. It is now $1 billion, 32 dollars. Right, FS? I hope I say it right. Or according to your minister, 1,000 million. 1,032 million East Caribbean dollars. So we've grown by 405% in revenue. So if there was no expansion of the economy, there was no growth, there were people not making money, how could we have collected 1,032,000? And when you break that down, half of that is from tax revenue. The non-tax is CBI. But about half of that is from the highest collection we've had, 470 million. That is it, revenue in taxes that we collected from people. And we still know plenty of people don't pay tax. A lot of people don't pay taxes. There are a lot of people who make much more money than people who pay taxes. Poor civil servants. The public officers, poor public officers, because their money, we know where it is. So we tax them first, once they reach the threshold. But there are people who make much more money than them, and they do not pay taxes. We still have little leakages in the collection of VAT as well. So we're still not collecting everything that is reflected in the economy. There is a percentage that is not collected. So I want to go back again to 2000. At the time, our recurrent expenditure was 253 million East Caribbean dollars. I see a former minister there. Reggie, imagine that. When the Prime Minister came from China in 2004, in March of 2004, you remember what he came back with, Reggie? $300 million worth of assistance from the government of the People's Republic of China. But in 2000, we were spending only $253 million recurrent expenditure. Let's fast forward to today. Let's fast forward to today and see how much the country has expanded. The government itself, I'm not even talking about the private sector, the government, look at the expansion that has taken place. So now we are looking at our recurrent expenditure, a growth of 169% of 680 million East Caribbean dollars. 680 million. We've grown by 169% in money we spend just to run the government services, the system. I'm not talking about capital, by the way. Capital is nowhere yet in that discussion. Just recurrent. So just look at it. And again, another figure I want you to think about. In 2000, the economy contracted by 4.6%. You imagine that, 4.6%. The economy just contracted, coming from 1999, right? So instead of growing, we shrink. We shrank. Is that the word? So that is what happened. That is what happened. And then, if you look at what happened then, our per capita growth, and sorry, 2025, you know what is the growth? Of course, the Minister of Finance said that, 4.5 in the positive. So we went from negative 4.6 to positive 4.5 in 2025. But there are things in between I'll tell you about in a while, because I want you to bear with me. I want to tell my story. bear with me. The per capita income in Dominica in 2000 was $4,867 US. In 2025, $9,866. 100% growth per capita income. The only way you can explain that is by an economy that has grown over 25 years. I'm not talking about small growth, you know, talking about significant growth in spite of the difficulties we've had in between. So I want to speak to that. Now, people talk about debt, and I'm saying this because I want some people who on the radio, I don't like to respond to people on the radio, playing, you know, they're good, they're fellow smart, they went to school and so. But some of them manipulate figures to tell the story they want to tell. So they talk about, oh, GDP, debt per GDP ratio, and now we at how much? 99%, 98%? Okay, we're way up there, yes. In 1995, we're 95%. We're 95%. And the news about it in 1995, our debt was about, I think, $700 million. Today is 1.3 billion. Okay, that's fine. But there's a story behind that. And I want to tell you that story because I think it's important that people know these things. Because sometimes we don't want to hear these facts. And I don't know if they're inconvenient or if they're just troubling us, so we don't want to hear them. But I want you to bear with me. In 2002, and by the way, I see the members here, most of you in your first term, when we came to Parliament in 2000 with the budget, 2001, 2002, and if you think I lied, there's a member in the gallery, and then I just realized, then there were two. It's Vincent Skerry, who were there in 2000 and 2001. Well, Honorable Blackmore was a special advisor to the Prime Minister at the time, successive Prime Ministers, and then got into the Parliament in 2005. But I will tell you this, when we came to Parliament with the budget, we used to just put the budget there. You see everybody there want to talk and everybody busy and have a big speech. All you want to do is let the Minister of Finance finish the thing and for you to get out of it. Because it was fire, pressure. So yes, what happened in 2002? So 2002, things were so bad, we decided to go into a stabilization program with the IMF. So we had a tripartite group, ECCB, CDB, the Ministry of Finance met and discussed measures that we could put in place. And things were so bad that what the options we had were to reduce the size of the public service by 10%, to reduce salaries by 10%. Now everybody got scared. We struggled for weeks debating, what do we do, what do we do? And we finally came up with the position that we will go ahead with the 10% reduction in salaries. And in addition to that, we put 4% levy on salaries and wage and all other benefits of public officers. 4%. So imagine what happened to public servants. They got a serious hit. We were able to survive that. So that is part of what we have to do. Reduction of salaries and wages of public officers by 10%, outsourcing of government services, and that's how we ended up with all the security firms that give us services, the janitary services and so forth. We increased the sales tax. At the time, we used to have sales tax on petroleum from 3 to 5%. At that time, well, gas was cheap. It was $7, $6 a gallon, you know, but we increased it. We imposed sales tax on telecommunication services. That's another thing that we had to do. We introduced the environmental surcharge. We put a whole bunch of things, and it was really a way to collect revenue, but also to discourage the importation of older vehicles and older equipment. Then we had the consumption tax on liquor. And I remember Pierre at the time saying, how we say, uni poche wabio, mais c'est champagne ou les bois. So they put the tax on liquor for people who wanted to drink
Interpret
expensive
for those who
liquor.
don't understand to
Oh,
understand.
sorry, I withdraw. So we had to do that. We had to reduce concessions as well that we gave to people. So there are a number of things that we had to do as sacrifices. But you know what? Our people survived. All people survived. They push on, they worked with us. I remember Sylvia Nicholas in the Teachers Association. I remember DAT being very, very supportive. And you remember at the time, our good friend Sonia, teacher Sonia, was in Public Service Union, and she was there holding the fort as the president, and she was pushing on, and we were trying, and we were working together. The Police Welfare Association came on board, and everybody made the sacrifice so that we could survive that very difficult time. But the good news is that we survived. A few years later, we were able to expand the economy and do so many things, and look at us today. Look at where we are today. But I still want to say that development options for small island developing states are very limited. Very, very limited. So we lost bananas, and the story behind that, most of us who are older know, it was the Americans who challenged our preferential treatment, that was our tariff-free entry into the UK market. At the World Trade Organization, they challenged that preferential treatment we received. And because of that, it resulted in the death of the banana industry as we knew it. But guess what? And for that, I have to give the UWP some credit. The late Julius Timothy, you know, he was a very creative Minister of Finance. And he started the gaming, he started all sorts of things, offshore, the offshore sector started growing. And as soon as the thing reached a stage where it was growing by 2001, FATF, OECD, non-cooperating countries and territories, boom, blacklist. So the thing just went back down because it had grown. It was growing. And then we got hit. We move on. We continue, according to my partner. We press on. We decided we were pressing on. CBI was there, but not doing very well at the time. We were still the last in the countries offering citizenship by investment. But we decided to push on. So there are not many options. But what there are vulnerabilities for small island states. Climate change, pandemics, global shocks of any type, like now the war in Iran. And these are the realities that we have to deal with. Because the question is, how do you grow a country? Exports, and as part of exports is tourism. Tourism is a big part of your export. It's an export product in that sense. You bring in foreign exchange into the country when the visitors come into the country. And we have made tremendous investments in tourism. And we're seeing the growth. We're seeing the growth, the 18% growth we got last year, we're seeing the growth. But it didn't just happen. It was through investments. We increased the seats into Dominica here by about 100,000. So we now have 166,000 seats, airlift seats into Dominica, and about 400,000, 464,000 or something like that, by sea. So we have seats. We have seats. We can bring people into Dominica, we've seen the growth, and they are coming. What we have to do is to continue to promote Dominica, to enhance our sites, and to make sure that we can bring more people into Dominica and let them spend more money. That is the kind of investment. But I want to go to now some of the vulnerabilities. And I don't know, people don't like to hear these things. But Tropical Storm Erica was the first major hit that started setting us back, because we started going on an upward trajectory. Our debt to GDP ratio by that time in 2015, 2014 was about 60-something%. 67% of GDP. We are within the ECCU acceptable range. And then we got hit. And in that year alone, in 2015, we saw a dive, again a contraction of the economy by 7.5%. 7.5%. We lost 90% of our GDP. $1.3 billion damage. $1.3 billion of damage. 90% of GDP in just a few hours, and the economy contracted by 7.5%. But it doesn't end there. So we had the loss of lives, but we also had loss of revenue, loss of business. But on top of that, it left us with a debt of $104 million just from loans. I'm saying this carefully because it's a story I'm telling. Thank God at the time CBI has started growing. So we had access to CBI funds, and that is where the Petite Savane people found themselves being relocated in Belleville-Chopin, fully financed by the Citizenship by Investment Program. Think about that. If we didn't have that, about maybe a $300 million to do the Belleville-Chopin project, how would we relocate the people from Petite Savane? If we did not have the benefit of the CBI, and mark your CBI didn't just grow by itself. It was right government policies, promotion, marketing, and a lot of decisions that work for us that help us in the marketplace, and we're able to raise funds to do things like the relocation of the Petite Savane people. So that's $104 million. Don't forget that. Don't forget that number. That was 2015. By 2017, Hurricane Maria came. And I know my partner, but up to last night, he told me he don't want to come and listen to us in Parliament talking about those things again, but I hope he's listening, because I will talk about it. If you don't want to tell your story, that is you, but I tell in that story. Hurricane Maria, I want you to follow me here. By that time, the damage was 3.5 billion EC dollars. More than twice what we saw, and it was 224% of GDP. That's what happened to us in 2017. And the economy contracted this again. Significant contraction. Significant contraction. So we've had that loss. But here's the thing, rebuilding, thank God again for CBI funds. We're able to respond quickly. Quickly. We were able to buy food. We went and we bought supermarkets. Although one say we never paid him. But we bought supermarkets and we were able to distribute food, distribute water to people. We were able to do that with our own resources. So while the UN and everybody coming, remember our good friends from World Food Program, you know, they came. But while these people was trying to come, remember PS, we were ordering whole boatloads of stuff from Barbados and wherever, and we went by Astafans and went by this place. Even the small supermarkets in Lindomart, somewhere there, we just buying up those things and able to distribute food and water to people throughout Dominica. That was money that was in the treasury, our CBI money. We were able to use to do that. But in spite of that, we had to contract loans. And this time, I said it was $104 million for Tropical Storm Erika response. We ended up with $341 million responding to Hurricane Maria. In loans. Loans. I want people to hear that, you know. Because when I finish, you will get it. $341 million in loans. And that is why we had to come to the Parliament and agree with the World Bank and the IMF to some terms, the 2% surplus. That is how it came about. It was part of that story. And it doesn't end there. So we ended up with $341 million loan. So then we started growing again. We started growing again. And if you look at the figures, you will see we started growing again. And man, I say, no, man, we just can't cut a break. 2020, COVID-19 virus, coronavirus hit us. And the government of Dominica had to create an entire hospital in Portsmouth. And continue to pay. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to say, after Hurricane Maria, we were paying people to stay at their homes. Remember that? People couldn't go to work. But nobody missed a salary. Nobody missed a salary. We were paying people to stay at their homes during Hurricane Maria. And the few of us who could make it were showing up every day. But most people couldn't make it. Then COVID hit, place shut down, people can't work, but people were receiving their salaries. Businesses got support. We were able to support some of them. The private sector, got quite a bit of help. We were able to do this. and to run the country uninterrupted during COVID. Again, we had to utilize our own funds that came about through the Citizenship by Investment program. But you know what? The economy contracted by 15.7%. Again, just loss of revenue, no business, and the government had to take loans. And you know, I was calculating, I thought it was a small amount because I remember I was tracking it some years ago. But when I got the full report from the Ministry of Finance, $277 million in loans. In loans, just to respond to COVID, to deal with COVID. So, all these figures that I gave you in terms of loans from these natural disasters and the pandemic, they add up to $722 million in loans that are now due to pay. We have to pay them. Most of them should be due. Now it means that out of every dollar we collect, you realize what happened there? You see how much money you have to take to service loans? For every dollar that is collected by revenue, we have to service those loans. Thank God we still have the ability to do that. But I'm saying this to say that the kind of largesse we had, the ability we had to do some things are now constrained by the fact that we have a debt burden brought about by natural disasters and a pandemic. But, you know, the good news is, in spite of all of that, Labour Party didn't just sit down there crying, you know. Or according to our leader of the opposition, he used to say, we come in here belly aching. We're not belly aching. So I'm not complaining. I'm just stating the facts because we never stop working. And thank God for the generosity of our friends. The government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, they were there with us, always. The People's Republic of China, when they came here in 2004, they have never left our side. And they have helped us to grow and develop. The government of Cuba has been in solidarity with us since 1970s, but more so in recent times, and we stand in solidarity with them today. They've educated our people. They provided healthcare workers to us, and we will always be grateful to them. The government of Morocco came on board and started assisting us. The UK government financed the Lubia to Bagatelle Road. And Julian boy, we're looking good. Where is he? He's not there. We're looking good. We're looking good. All you go to Breakfast Fair, all you see how good we're looking. And we encourage you to go to Breakfast Fair too. Go to Breakfast Fair this weekend. We're looking good. And when you go, you'll go on the Geneva playing field. We're looking good. We're looking good. So you will see how good we're looking. But again, for the generosity of our friends, the government of the United States, the government of India. So we've had so many friends who help us during those very difficult times. But during all this difficult time that I spoke about, from the collapse of the banana industry to the hurricanes and the pandemic, we never stopped working to develop this country. And one thing I'll agree with you, leader of the opposition, development is not a wish list. It is not even a sprint, it's a marathon. It's something that takes hard work, dedication, discipline, and sometimes it takes time. Geothermal. It takes time. But we have never stopped working. So while things were difficult, we knew that we could not develop Dominica if we had not increased air access. And we invested in the expansion of the Douglas Charles Airport. We got night landing. We moved from a boxing plant to a nice terminal building. Yeah, I remember we had just a little box there. You just come there. You know that well. I mean, your days. So we got night landing. And you remember the days when you used to be stuck in Antigua? Well, I grew up going to St. Martin every holiday. So I know what it was to get stuck in Antigua. Little boy. And when lights go, when night reaches and the plane no come, that's it. They have to put in a little guest house somewhere close to the airport. I don't know where they get these names for them. These are some funny names. And they'll put you in a little guest house somewhere because you know you can't go Dominica. We got night landing, but we did not stop there. Minister of Tourism. We expanded the runway and the grooving. The grooving, the minister, I'd like to say that. The grooving of the runway to make it safer for American Airlines and now for United. So we didn't stop working. In all of these challenges, we continue to invest in Dominica's development. And then, I don't know, again, people, I look around, boy, I just realize how old I am, you know, boy. Maybe I should grow a little, you know, maybe try to get bigger because I don't, maybe I'm feeling myself young, man. As if I'm feeling young. So sometimes I just forget my age, you know. But, you know, you look around and you see, you remember how it was going to the airport from Roseau? You remember that little, you know, well, I don't know where you guys raised up, but in St. Joe, we had a little thing we used to play in a big stone in the river. You used to play man on the throne, and you have to try to throw people down. So, man on the throne. So, but you remember that little road when you reach Pokase? It's like you're playing man on the throne, you know, because it's who can stay will stay. The other man have to go down. That was the road we had. Although I understood there's a history to that, it was a feeder road the British had given us because it was Libra who tricked them to get that road, and Eugenia Charles as well, to tell them it was a feeder road for farmers, and they made the road, so it was very narrow. We made that road from Canefield to Pokase and Pokase to Hatton Garden. That was done during difficult times. Pierre Charles was still Prime Minister when we started, and then my good friend there was Minister of Works. Reggie, Austria. We did that road during a very difficult time. We did, well, yeah, we did. So that is one. That is one. Then with the assistance of the government of China, we did the West Coast Road. Again, my partner used to say, you know, you have to play hopscotch to see which hole you take it when you're going down the West Coast. You know, I mean, unfortunately, we're here over years. It's getting bad again. We have to look at that. That might be a new investment. But we're able to do that. We're able to make major infrastructural development investments. The Windsor Park Stadium. You remember that? You remember how Windsor Park was before? Yeah. Although for the life of me, I don't know why we still call it Windsor. But the Windsor Park Stadium, you know, is again another evidence of the ingenuity, the leadership of Roosevelt Skerrit after he became Prime Minister. One of his first acts was to go to China, establish relations, because in 1999, the United Workers' Party struggled to build the stadium. They took bonds from Trinidad, I think it was up to $75 million. They say some for the airport, some for the stadium, some for something else, and they couldn't build a stadium. Today we are building an international airport without that bond, without 16% interest rate. No interest rates, no loan, and we are still building an international airport in spite of what I just told you, $722 million in loan, economic contraction brought about by hurricanes and the pandemic. We still invested in the largest infrastructure project in the history of Dominica. Something as, well, you know, when I listen, when I listen to the leader of the opposition, I just say, hey, la boy, just like after my lap pen. Because I said,
No, maybe this one you should say what Lapin means.
I'm feeling sorry for her.
Yeah.
But one thing I have to say before I continue, I say why I was feeling sorry for her. One thing, she have lalin, eh? No, don't ask me to interpret that. I don't know how to translate that. I don't know what lalin means in English. I just know the concept. I know the concept.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she stood up with the same energy that she started with, she ended with. Yes. True West Coast. So, I am saying to her, I listened to her, and I feeling sorry because I said, hey, boy, if we didn't do all those things there, boy, what just now talk about now? You realize that? And that's one thing I love about the discussion in Dominica today. Because the things that people are talking about is because we've done so many things. Because she's correct in saying that, yes, we have to make those things work for us, you know. We have to translate them. We have to make sure people get employment or people empower themselves and create opportunities. But all she was speaking about is the opportunities. But there would have been no opportunities without these investments. No opportunities. So I agree with her that we have to empower people and make sure we take advantage of these opportunities. Although, like I told her, I don't see how a fisherman going in a marina. But, I mean, that is just a little matter that we can deal with later. But there are so many things that we can do because we have created the opportunities, we've made the investments, and we have to continue pushing forward. I mean, at the time when we were recovering from hurricanes, we decided to invest. Right now, it came to almost 200 and something million on the East Road. East Road. I mean, from, how you call that place? Wadiab? You know, going to Hatton Garden through the Kalinago territory. That is the kind of investments that we've made because we want to improve the conditions of people, the lives of people. No, I agree with you. A lot of unintended consequences. A lot of times people don't fully embrace those investments. You know, you give people assets that would make them better, and sometimes they don't properly and fully embrace it. But we have to improve. We'll work on that. And I agree, we need to make some of those housing developments into communities, facilities and life around them, and to improve people's conditions of living. I agree. But this is the same government during very difficult time that was able to build a state college and give college access to all Dominican students. All Dominican students who wanted to go to college had a space at college. And it's the same government that started universal secondary education. But I take it my boy, Mr. Abdul nobody. Me, I was Minister of Education at the time. I went to PM and I tell PM, I think I can guarantee you this year that every child that the common entrance get in a space. We build classrooms in Senjo. I get Chupa and them to build how much classroom by the old home ec. We made co-houses. We went to Portsmouth, PSS. We built. Went to Marigot, we built. It was, how they call the school at the time? No, it was an office. It was an St. Andrew. We expanded spaces. No, we had an office by the time, it's true. We expanded classroom spaces and we were able to accommodate every student. But we did not stop there, Mr. Speaker. We provided them with books, with uniforms, with school with meals, and transportation. Boy, I so want to talk about that. Thank you for reminding me. No, but I have to boast a little. I have some lovely constituents in Granby, and they keep telling me, well, Paradise, you see, it's your fault. You don't like to tell people what you're doing. You're just doing things. You're helping people. You help do it within the place, and you don't go boasting. So don't say that. You're not saying your face. So we go ahead, because I always feel that if you do something for somebody, it's not to go and tell people or show people or go and take a picture. I don't know. It's my upbringing, you know. Yeah. So, but anyway, but I have upbringing in that one. So when I was Minister of Education, I remember. But that's why I tell you we have Geneva playing field. Those who can bring bands, bring bands. Those who can bring ice, bring ice. We all participate. That is what I love about the Granby people and the spirit of embodiment of the real Granby people. You know, and you know. So you don't let me forget my bosses, you know. And I remember it was about 2007, around there about, when I invited the mayor of Milan, Letitia Moderati. I remember her well. I introduced her because I was introduced to her by the daughter of the late Vanos John Charles. And I went to Milan to meet, and she came here. We had a great time, brought her around. And the only ask is that, well, we got a nice ambulance at the time, very modern ambulance as a gift. That was Vanos' idea. But we also got $1 million to buy 10 school buses. And remember those nice yellow and black school buses like in the movies, no? Like in TV, no? Like in America. So, because I so wanted the thing to look like America, I let them spray it in yellow and black. And we allocated them to different parts, different schools, and they provided transportation to us too. That was what your government was doing at very difficult times. So we use our friendship, our foreign relations, because it wasn't free. I mean, I voted for them for Expo 2015. But it was part of something, but we got something out of it for the benefit of our people. That is what we've been doing. And that's why when I heard the leader of the opposition speak of, using your foreign relations as a tool. That's so long I doing that. Since little boy doing that. Since little boy doing that. So we've been doing this. This is what has helped us today with the Dominica-China Friendship Hospital. That is how we got it. It was using the tool of foreign relations. But for God's sake, I cannot go and tell them, man, we're going to ship fig and dash into China. But I agree with you, we should look at trade as a possibility as well. But it's not every opportunity that will be created in such a manner. We build the fisheries complexes. We build Marigot and Portsmouth. I remember I was Minister of Fisheries at the time. I was Minister of plenty of things. I was Minister of Fisheries at the time when we built the Marigot Fisheries Complex. And then I remember that them fellas in Portsmouth decided they want one too. So we gave them one. So we built them. And today, we are grateful to the government of Japan for the Rosa Fisheries Complex as well. And now that Dexia is managing that facility for the sale of fish, we have seen over $500,000 in purchase of fish from fishermen. That is real money, madam, real money that went to real people. And that adds in the GDP growth of the country. So those things, they are not abstract. You just have to understand them. But we are hoping that the next phase of the fisheries, I have to thank Dexia for that.
15 more minutes.
Thank you. And I want to thank my PS there. I want to thank PS Daly. Well, it's not my PS, it's the ministry's PS. I always say that. The PS of Foreign Affairs, International Business, Trade and Energy, and for her assistance. So I'm going to withdraw them. So, for her efforts and with the support of the Financial Secretary, the Financial Secretary was able to come to us and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to help you to get a credit facility so that you can procure fish. We're able to do that, and I want to thank PS and FS, and of course, our consultant at Dexia, Mr. Cleve Senjin, Cleve Seja, for helping and working, and of course, Nisa Dong managing the facility, and of course, the chairman and the GM of Dexia for their work, and I really want to thank them for that. So we have been able to utilize our foreign relations as a tool for development. And we're very, very happy for that. But we hope we can do more. And before I move on to my final topic, at the time when we were going through all of these challenges, we saw the contraction of the rural economies because of the loss of bananas. And don't forget, bananas was also supporting the growth of other non-banana crops. It was the anchor. So once you lost bananas, you lost a lot of the other things around it. That caused major dislocation in rural communities. And I don't think some of us truly appreciate what the beautification teams of the NEP, what that means for these rural communities. Because it has almost replaced that loss and sort of buttressed the livelihoods of people in the communities. And I can speak to that because I represent Grand Bay, Tetmon, Martin, Grand Colibri, and for a lot of us, that is the only form of revenue for our people. The beautification of the National Employment Program. There are other things that people do on the NEP, yes, great stuff, but that one in particular, and when I think of people like Leandra, oh, did I forget to call her away? I have to call her back. When I think of Leandra Robin, and the kind of commitment these people have exhibited, Cleo, well, those days Cleo come in Rosa dressed nice, she in office. But Cleo, the femme, as the head supervisor of the NEP team, I mean, this lady, I don't know. I still feel bad because I don't think I could work hard as them. In the sun. And she gave them leadership. My good friend Delma Henderson. I mean, when I think of you know, Cello and them, Gemma and them, and Joyce and all these people who, that is what they do. You know, that's what they do, and they keep the place so nice. But Grand Bay is always the most beautiful place. They have the best NEP teams. And when you go to Breakfast Fete, you will see that. When you take the drive up the road, you will see that because we keep the place clean, immaculate. You know, Mr. Speaker, we talk about development and all these difficult times. We still made the right investments. And that's why I feel so happy when I hear people talk about geothermal. Not because it has happened. But because people are now beginning to think and dream and imagine things, and that is the message I have been trying to get for the last 20 years. Because I don't want us to just see this as an infrastructure, as you said. It's not just a piece of infrastructure, it is the possibilities. And again, in keeping with how I started, I want to say, again, I'm going to say something that plenty of people are going to say choops about, but I'm going to say it anyway. I want to take the opportunity to thank the workers of Domlec. No, because everybody vex their light go. They had how much light go in and thing happening, light flicking and all kind of thing. Everything, so people were vexed and making trouble. Although I have to talk to Domlec about fixing people appliances. But I want to thank the general manager, Mr. Sinap, Dwayne, and his team. People like Daryl and some of the names that I will get as I speak. Dave Stamp, my good friend, on the generation side. But I'm telling you this, I want to apologize to Dominican people for the disruptions, and various disruptions and interruptions with your lives and the discomfort that it may have created. But it was necessary. It was for a greater good. It was not one of those occasions where your light just go. Your lights went because we were trying to get this thing right. And I want to tell you about what it means by getting the geothermal right. But I want to go back to Domlec. I want to thank the staff, the technicians, the engineers, because these guys were amazing. I had the opportunity to spend some time with them troubleshooting. That was the first time we had an error on the line, just after we started.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the Honorable Minister be given an additional 10 minutes.
Second, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the Honorable Henderson be given an additional 10 minutes. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Honorable Henderson, you are given an additional 10 minutes.
Thank you, everyone. Mr. Speaker, so the staff of Domlec, I had the opportunity to be there when they were troubleshooting the first time we had a fault on the line. And I was so impressed with the approach to seeking to solve that problem and the creativity in the end, because they came up with their own solution, even in the absence of having the spare parts that they required to repair the fault. And they were able to move so many levers to keep the lights on. But most importantly is that the commissioning process, well, it's really commissioning, it's kind of oxymoron. Commissioning process. It's a process already. So the commissioning of the geothermal power plant was a real challenge, and anybody would have been challenged by that. So think about this. So Domlec, what we did last year, we introduced into the network a battery energy storage system of 6 megawatt hours. We introduced that into the system. Domlec engineers had never worked with a battery energy storage system before. We got them training. We had Smart Energy on island. They provided support to them. And lately we had Huawei, because we're using Huawei technology from China. And we're able to train them how to use it. But that was during calm. Everything was quiet. There was no geothermal power on the grid yet. So they were learning, getting used to it. Geothermal power came online on March 5th. We turned on the turbines, turned on the generators, start bringing power onto the grid in March. And when that happened, the technicians of Domlec had to deal with a battery energy storage system. But guess what? Once we completed the underground 33 kV transmission lines, which is working well, it's been properly, it's done, it's complete. They had to now deal with transformers of 33,000 volts when the highest voltage that Domlec had was 11,000. So 3 times what they were used to. and more complex because an 11,000 volt transformer is different from a 33,000 volt transformer. The amount of moving parts, the amount of different stuff that you had to deal with, you don't have to deal with that 11,000 kV. So they had to learn that. So the Calta Peru, the Indian company that's doing the transmission system, they had to trained Domlec staff. They brought them to India, they brought them to Brazil, they brought them to places where they already had installations so they could train them how to use the switch gears, how to use the transformers, and how to be able to manage the system. And then, geothermal power is not a diesel generator or solar power. Geothermal power provides steady power, and the turbines, the generators, the whole system is very sensitive. Because of the nature of it, you don't have much tolerance level. So it is very, very sensitive because it has to protect itself if something goes wrong. So if, as it has happened, in Sugarloaf there's a problem, it fits right all the way back to Loda. And when the system detects that there is some issue, it protects itself. It takes a little time. It's supposed to take a little time. Initially, it wasn't taking a little time. It was just shutting down itself. And that's why sometimes we have just a sudden power loss. If I tell you that, then the light wouldn't go then. So, yeah, but you have a point. I agree. I agree. But here we are. So, all of those things were happening at the same time, and Domlec was still responding to those challenges and keeping the lights on as far as they could. As far as they could. And what happened as well when the geothermal power came online, Domlec realized that perhaps there's some couple little things that we need to improve. And they did. The good thing about it, they were able to detect the problems. After they did the assessments, analyzed the whole thing, they identified the problem and they responded to it. They fixed it so it wouldn't happen again. And the last month in July, we started reliability testing. And that was one of the biggest frustration I had through the entire process, was that Friday when the power went off for, thank God it wasn't for long. And then steam started coming out of Loda, and people start spreading some rumors that a pipe burst. That's what they say, a pipe burst. but no pipe burst. It is a system that the generator, the entire plant, because it is not giving the power to the grid, it has to get rid of some of the steam, and then you just open it up and it goes in the atmosphere. But it's very safe. It's not any accident. It's nothing strange happening. And then we got back to the reliability test, and that was completed. That was done, and I wish to inform the House, as was done by Her Excellency the President, although you cannot refer to her in your debate. Commissioning took place on the 31st of July, 2026. So now, that was not a ceremony. It was a process completed. And it is now triggering the legal obligations on Domlec. So it's also a very sensitive time for us. We have to pay attention. It's the first time we're doing this. And I will say finally on this, Ormat is the #1 producer of geothermal power plants in the world. It's way up there. These guys have been doing this for a very, very, very long time, and they have done it so many places. We had ISO and HD as our consultants from Iceland. Iceland is well known for geothermal energy. That is where the UN Geothermal School University is located. That's where we train most of our people in geothermal energy. So we have these consultants. And then we have Sofreco from Europe, I think it's France. We have Sofreco as our consultant. So we have 2 sets of consultants. So all of these smart people who have tremendous experience came together to deal with the challenges we were going through. And you know what came out of that discussion? Together with Domlec, of course, and Fred John, the unsung hero from DGDC and his staff. Fred John and Dalton Elwa, Shaisha, Rita Detush, my classmate, you know, and all the great people there. They came together, and OMAT admitted to us, and everybody around the table admitted to us, that is the first time they had to deal with such a complex system on a small island grid. So what you saw happen in Dominica, that I am hoping somebody will write this so that it becomes part of the learning for Nevis, who is seeking to do like us. Grenada has not abandoned the ambition. St. Lucia is moving forward with it as well. So that this will become an opportunity. So for the first time in a long time, we can say we are first in something that we can give and teach other people about. And that should be a proud moment for us. So I know we're concerned about the reduction, and yes, we've seen a reduction, and we will see reduction. But it is bigger than that. When you look at your TV and you see some blockage somewhere and the price of fuel going crazy, and then some people might not send you fuel, or you can feel comforted by the fact that most of your electricity is generated without fuel, without diesel, through hydro and geothermal. And what DOMLEC submitted to us is that 68% of our energy was supplied for renewables in July. In June. In July, I suspect it's going to get to 70-something. And what we're hoping to do is to invest more in stabilizing the grid, put more battery energy storage systems within the DOMLEC network, and we have written to our friends to see how they can assist us in doing that. Since we're already using Chinese technology, we're using Huawei, we're hoping that we can continue using Huawei batteries so that the workers at DOMLEC will have a less steep learning curve because they will be familiar with that technology. And also it makes it easier to train because you have one supplier who will be able to provide the support. I'm not saying that it is the only way, but that would be the most efficient way. Once we can get that into the DOMLEC grid, even if it's just 5 megawatt hours or 6 megawatt hours to mirror what we already have, although our target is 10, we would be able to better utilize hydropower. Because there are times when we're going to have excess hydro that we have to curtail, which is also a good practice because we're not drawing down too much water from the lake. And we can manage it so that we can use more hydro at peak times. So it is a sort of very complex system that we're trying to put in place so that we can properly utilize geothermal power and more efficiently use hydro to minimize the use of diesel. That is for now, until we get to our transmission to the north or able to generate power in the north. But I think the best, again, most efficient way is to transmit to the north. We are waiting for the results, for the recommendations from a consultancy funded by the World Bank to tell us exactly what is the best approach, the most efficient approach. But as far as I'm concerned, based on all the information that I have had the opportunity to review and the advice I have been given, the most efficient system is to get the transmission to the north and expand LODA. The expansion of LODA can be done, well, let me qualify that. Once we have run the plant for 6 months, that is by the end of the year, under pressure, producing 10 megawatts, we will be able to better determine the nature of our reservoir where the steam is coming from. So this place under the ground, about 2 kilometers down, that is what is called the reservoir where the steam is coming from. And that we will be able to be advised whether it is possible to add another 5 megawatt generator, turbine and generator, that we can produce 5 more megawatts without additional drilling, which would be the ideal. It means, therefore, you can have a cheaper production of power and you will be able to see more benefit to the consumers. But that is something that we have to take our time. We have to take our time and get it done. And just to respond to a commentator on the radio, a leader of a political party, I don't even know what the party name is because it's so insignificant. What's the guy's name again? UPP. The guy said it took so long to bring geothermal online that it's going to take longer to get to 0% diesel by 2030. I mean, how absurd can that be from an intelligent man? My brother, if it took, and he used to teach economics. Incremental thing, something like that. I remember they used to teach in economics. The unit cost will be lower. The learning curve will be less steep. The investments will be smaller because everybody was afraid of coming to Dominica to build a geothermal plant. I'll tell you that's true. That's why our tender failed in 2019. because people were spooked. They think it's too difficult to bring stuff here. When they look at loader, think of it, drive up loader, and you see where those trucks pass. You would drive a truck there if you could drive a truck? It wasn't easy, but we've done it. So now that we've done it, we have proven the concept, fella, whoever your name is. Then it becomes easier. So Dominica is the only small island developing state that can truly say that it can get to 0% diesel in electrification by 2030 because it is there. The infrastructure is there. It becomes easier. Everything else becomes easier. Even now doing transmission line. But I was so afraid of that underground thing them fellas are talking about. When I think of all little twists, little road, little tight roads we have to pass in Loda, come down at the back there, go down. Vehicles cannot drive. I still say the place was shut down, but it was done. With some complaints, but it was done. So it means we can go to Portsmouth. We have a wider roadway, with the exception of Mahon Massacre, that we have to figure out how we're going to deal with that. Yeah. Well, I have already looked at that. Oh, yeah. So with the exception of that, everything else is easy. It's cut, dig, lay, cover. Cut, dig, lay, cover. That's it, eh? And a fella going on radio and talking about, oh, we can't do that. My brother, Dominica has proven that it can do one of the most complex energy systems. The only small island developing state independent, because Papua New Guinea have a thing there, 50 megawatts. Every time I see this, we almost spoil our record. But Papua New Guinea has 11 million people. They're not a small state. And them have so much oil. They're not a small state, guys. And all kind of things. No. That's not a small state. So Dominica is really the first small island developing state, independent, to build a geothermal power plant. Azores has plans, but Azores is part of Portugal. You know, there's another territory against, well, Guadeloupe is part of France. You know, we did this on our own, with the support of our friends, and we have a lot of friends to thank. But, you know, as I turned across, I saw a PS sitting over there. And I didn't have to go back to my notes because it just got my memory going again. You know, one of the most gratifying things about this geothermal plant we've commissioned is when you go to the plant, you will see that 26 out of the 28 workers there are Dominicans. Young Dominicans, young engineers who were working at Domlec on the production side, recent graduates from the State College, and they have been trained. So when PS Giston opened the valve for the first time and the steam started coming out, I couldn't contain myself. We still have a video of him somewhere. Because it was such an emotional moment to see young Dominicans leading the way. And when I visited the plant last Sunday, I met two of them at the control. They're sitting there, monitoring the thing and controlling it. I mean, this is a great achievement for us. And I do hope, and I get the support, and I get the impression that we have all seen this as a national project. And we are all seeing the potential of it. And therefore, we need to rally around. And my partner from Marigot used to tell me every time I go and ask for big money, big money. But I will say this to you, my friend, and I have said this publicly elsewhere, throughout the world, wherever I go and I'm invited to speak, that energy is a public good. Electricity is a public good. Governments must invest in energy systems, whether it's in transmission, production of power, but governments have to invest. And sometimes we see things other places and we say, why we can't do it in Dominica? But we don't know how they do it. Because in every country with geothermal, there is some government subsidy. So people criticize us for having acquired lands, having invested, having done this. Every government, everywhere in the world, had to make some investments in development of significant things for the country. Now, energy, power, is one of the biggest drivers of development. I wouldn't call it a driver. It is essential. It is critical. You cannot develop if you don't have energy. And what we should be looking at is how we can now electrify the country, move more into electric vehicles, and that is something we need to seriously consider. Because if we can do that, I know FSU would be happy, balance of trade numbers and, foreign thing and all these nice things that you economists people do and when you balance in the books. It is all part of the overall fiscal position of the country. And I believe that if we can get ways and creatively as we move along to expand the generation of power, to electrify our country by moving through electric vehicles and other areas of power, it will help us in providing more benefits to more people. Because a greater consumption of power, it means that the rate of power will be lower. If we can expand, if we can get into shore power that I know the Minister of Ports like to talk about, and my good friend Benoit Badwil, and Darwin Telemark. I know we recently had an engagement at the OECS level where we were talking about shore power, but Dominica is the only country that can seriously talk about shore power with clean energy, because shore power is based on clean energy. And you cannot have shore power with solar panels and batteries. You can only have shore power with base load power like geothermal. Geothermal is base load, it's constant all the time, 24/7. We can create a new industry around that. And I spent a significant part of my time on geothermal looking at exporting power to Guadeloupe and Martinique. While that may be a good ambition, I really urge us to think about developing industry in Dominica, being able to build Dominica based on power. Power source in this age is the key to moving any economy, and we have to consider. I would prefer we produce energy cells through ammonia, green hydrogen, and create more opportunities for more investments in Dominica, for more work in Dominica. Of course, if we have the opportunity to get an investor who wants to extract some power and export it to one of the territories, that is fine. But I believe, no, I've done it.
Yeah, Honorable Minister, you had 1 more minute.
Yeah, I've been counting myself. So, Mr. Speaker, I move that the Honorable Minister be given an additional 10 more minutes to conclude his presentation.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the Honorable Dr. Vincent Nelson be given additional 10 minutes. Those in favor? Those against? Doctor, you have an additional 10 minutes.
I was told that there was once a Dr. Willie in Dominica. I'll tell you the rest about that. But, we have an opportunity before us, and I said this budget this year presents some areas to benefit many, and I see my good friend has left, the customs broker, Brian Guitar, because he went and calculated a whole bunch of things for me on the simplification of the taxes and duties and all of that stuff, and to see the benefits that everybody can get. And my good friend, Dean Deluxe, and as Siri calls him, Desire, he did a calculation for me and he provided it to me and showed me the benefits. So the point is, there are a number of things. And the thing about a budget is for everybody within a sovereign territory, or maybe part of a sovereign territory, as it. But in this case, the national budget is for everybody. All the benefits cannot be for everybody. I don't know where we get the notion, as if we have to explain that. There are things that some people will benefit from, and there are things that other people will not. It's a national budget. There's no way it cannot. I mean, there are times that you can take action that everybody can benefit. Because even the case of the non-compounding of the taxes and duties of the customs can benefit everyone. And if done properly, and I have to say last year, when we zero-rated the basket of goods, the importers, they cooperated. They reflected the reduction. We did 2 rounds of surveillance, 3 rounds of surveillance, and the overwhelming majority of importers showed that they reduced the price or kept it at a level that was good for the majority of goods. And I feel confident that this time around that we will see the same, but knowing human nature, we will continue doing surveillance. And I do hope that this time perhaps it could be the opportunity for a new discussion on consumer protection. I know that it is something that we've tried to stay away from for a long time, but we see now that it's becoming more and more important to increase support. And I think Clevin Mills and the group of consumer protection advocates have written to myself and I think the Minister of Finance, and I'm hoping that we can meet with them very soon so that we can support their work and have more awareness. But people can shop with their, as they say in the US, they like to say, you vote with your pocketbooks. I mean, you have to determine where you spend your money. I mean, if somebody's not showing the reduction, why you go and buy their thing? I mean, it's not to say in a little village, if there's one shop you have and it's there, you must go. You know, so I also think that that argument that people are saying, oh, it wouldn't be passed on, then don't go by people who are not passing it on. I wouldn't call names, but we have the numbers. I wouldn't call names. I would prefer the consumer advocates, consumer rights advocates talk about the names. And, you know, I will not call their names. But, Mr. Speaker, I am hoping that some of the actions here and the measures will benefit as much people as possible, because we believe that it is really, at the end of the day, for the benefit of the people that these actions are taking place. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to say finally, and I want to reiterate something that I may have said before. Development is not easy, and I don't want to sound sexist in that sense. Sometimes it's not sexy. It's not always exciting. And think about it. Just think back at some of the best things that we've been able to achieve. A lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of efforts. And I'm not saying this to give myself comfort, having pursued geothermal energy development for more than a decade. Well, if one counting, you could say 2 decades, but the better part of a decade. But we have to understand, and I started by giving the picture of where we were in 2000 and where we are now. I said this because I want us as a people to truly appreciate our strength, our resilience, our ability to rise above challenges, and now we hear the threats on the CBI, a program that has transformed Dominica in so many ways. We talk about the threats. But we have to tell ourselves that we've gone through so many challenges before. And we have prevailed. I remember when Ross University left, some people chastised me for making the comparison to the loss of the banana industry, and we still survive. I understand the pain of the people who have investments in Portsmouth. But I'm saying that we ought not to allow adversities to demoralize us to the sense that we become paralyzed. We have to find solutions. We have to find a way through adversity. And the good thing for us is the project is I don't want to talk for Minister of Finance, but sometimes you get the impression that people believe that every cent that the government spends comes from CBI. And that's why I took my time and I made mention of the highest level of collection of revenue in our history, $470-something million last year. Tax revenue, not CBI. And most of the funds from the CBI is building for us our biggest infrastructure projects, from the airports to the marina to the cable car, hotels. So the message I want to leave is that we're not just all going to die because something happens that adversely affects the CBI. We have to be prepared to push on. Unfortunately for us, we are not so heavily dependent on revenue from CBI to survive. And the investments that we're making here in agriculture, and I'm excited to hear what the minister will present. The recent commissioning, well, operation of the abattoir, it's not properly formally commissioned, but at least we have seen production, and Dexia is assisting in the purchase of the birds so that the farmers, the livestock farmers, can get paid as soon as they supply their birds and their livestock to the abattoir. We are hoping that this will expand. We're hoping that we can start cutting and labeling and be able to compete. That is where the challenge is. We have to be able to compete, to reduce imports. Because there are many things that we are doing that will put us in a, well, have already put us in a better place. Once we grow them, we can transform our fortunes. And I believe that the same thing, tourism, we talk about tourism a lot because tourism has the ability to have immediate impact. There was a time we didn't have seats. Now we have seats. We have to fill the seats. We have to fill the seats. There's a time we didn't have hotel rooms. We are adding hotel rooms, but we have to add more hotel rooms. We have to bring those hotels into completion. We have to get more rooms, more export-ready rooms. We've seen the growth of Airbnb, but there are different clientele, people looking for different things. We have to be able to provide those things. We have to develop the products. And I know the minister has a good plan for us, Parrot, in Meru. We have, where do you remember for Salisbury? The leader of the opposition. I mean, they have a nice beach over there, but I mean, you know, the premier, the best beach in all of Dominica is in Meru. I mean, that's it's the best beach in Dominica. So, of course, different strokes for different folks, kind of thing. No, but it is one of the, and we've made the investments. We've made the investments. You know, so we have been able to invest in Meru, on Meru Beach. And I remember I did that when I was Parrot. We started that project. And I see the capsec there. She was once PS in tourism. And I see my friend there. And I see tourism people, right? Remember, and we were able to do that facility and grow something there that has the potential for greater growth. Because it is part of the product. It is part of the tourism product. And we have to continue to invest in facilities so that we can make more money for our people. But Mr. Speaker, I hope that as we sit in our sober reflections, that we embrace the opportunities that have been created by this Labour Party government. We have seen, and you know, sometimes we forget. So before I forget myself, I want to say it again. If we go back and see the amount of people who went to university in 2000, so that was the other one I forgot to put in there. And the amount of graduates that we have today from universities across the world. I mean, Dominica has come a long way. And the majority of these graduates have no student loan. The generosity of the states, the sacrifices of taxpayers before you. And we should never forget that. We should never become too haughty and too, that feeling of accomplishment that sometimes we forget. It is through the generosity of others that we got to where we are. Taxpayers' money, in other words, send us to school with good policies from a progressive government with a leader, Roosevelt Skerrit of the Dominica Labour Party. And that is the story. And the story of endurance is the story of Roosevelt Skerrit and the Dominica Labour Party for 26 years, leading Dominica in very difficult times. That is what I want us to think about in our sober reflections. I'm not reproaching people. One of the greatest satisfaction I had was to see Dominicans go to study all over the world. I remember going to a little place called Tasco in Mexico, looking for students to make sure they're okay. Back then I had my old boys there from St. Joe, I had Breasty, I had Oyce, I had all set of them fellas there studying. Then I had a group of them at Grambling State University. You had to take a little plane, sometimes drive for 2 hours to go to Grambling from Shreveport, because we created that opportunity for our students. And I remember those who went to Plattsburgh in the early days with the help of Dr. Peters. And we have done all of this. Cuba, of course, I've been throughout Cuba. San Fuego, Santiago, just visiting students, making sure they're okay, making sure that they can complete. And I had the privilege of being the Minister of Education when we sent the first group of students to China. People have to remember those things. Labour Party has done, people talking about giving man fish. Boy, for teach people to fish. Right now, we're supposed to have so much cooling and bad and everything. You know, for teach people to fish. Then people come and criticizing us 26 years, you're not teaching people to fish. But what else to do? You want me to go for the line, put it in your hand, show you how to roll it, bring it back, take the fish for you and put it in your fridge? What do you want me to do? You know, I mean, we have to be able to tell our story. And I'm saying this to us here on this side, and to the wider membership of the Dominican Labour Party. All you're too afraid to tell the story, all you're running and hide, and people telling all about 26 years. That is the facts that you need to put before them. That is the 26 years.
1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I finish.
Yes, Honorable Pinard.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You are recognized. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise this afternoon to give my strong support to the 2026 Appropriations Act that is laid before the House this afternoon, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, before I proceed, let me just want to recognize another excellent address that was presented by Dr. McIntyre 2 days ago. Dr. Mark continues to prove that he is a man apart. He is a true gentleman and a patriot, and I always remember that Dr. Mark walked away from a thriving business and chose to come and serve the people of Dominica in this honorable house. So we have to give due respect where it is due, and I want to thank Dr. Mark for his service. Also, before I get into the meat of my presentation, I want to recognize the Honorable Miriam Blanchard. Mr. Speaker, as in my capacity of Minister of State in the Ministry of Labor and Small Business, I had the benefit of being tutored by Honorable Blanchard because she was the senior minister in that ministry when I first came into office, Mr. Speaker. And so she was the one to show me the ropes. She was the one to let me know how the inner workings of the public service gone about its business. So I had that close working relationship with her from the very beginning. I got to witness firsthand, Mr. Speaker, how much she truly loved what she did, how she was truly appreciated of the opportunity to serve her people and the love and the compassion that she had for the people of her constituency, the Roseau North constituency, Mr. Speaker. And I also got to witness firsthand how much it pained her when she fell ill, Mr. Speaker, and she was no longer able to perform at the high level that she had set for herself, Mr. Speaker. And so I could see the anguish in her when she had to pull back and from her active duties. So I just really want to wish her a speedy recovery, a full and speedy recovery, and hopefully we can see her once again in the future, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my presentation this afternoon is to really put the record of this government on the table, Mr. Speaker. The record of how this government did various measures over the years that the government has employed to address the high cost of living, Mr. Speaker. And that will culminate with what the Honorable Minister of Finance presented in this year's address, Mr. Speaker. So, Speaker, we will look at both the tax and the non-tax measures that have been employed in terms of our efforts to address the high cost of living in the country. Mr. Speaker, the Income Tax Act was first enacted, the one that had subsequently been amended was enacted in 1983, January 1983, under the Dominica Freedom Party. That was very early in the administration of the Dominica Freedom Party. That was in the first term. And as would be expected, they are the ones who put the act together. They are the ones who passed it in Parliament. They didn't make many amendments to the act over the remaining 12 years that they were in office. However, what surprised me, Mr. Speaker, is that when the UWP came into office in 1995, they also didn't do nothing much in terms of amending the act. I think I saw the first amendment that they did to the act, which was to increase the tax holidays that were being granted to hotels. They increased the term of a tax holiday from 10 years to 20 years. And then there were one or two other little amendments, sort of like how income would be recognized if you're using a private vehicle for business purposes and so on. But nothing that would address the cost of living and the impact on the everyday working man, Mr. Speaker. Effectively, they did nothing along the fiscal policy in that sense, Mr. Speaker, to address the high cost of living and to see how they could end up putting an extra dollar in a man's pocket. Mr. Speaker, the Labour Party came into office in January of 2000. And we came into office having inherited a bankrupt country effectively, Mr. Speaker. Treasury was empty. The country was in debt that it couldn't afford to pay, Mr. Speaker. But nonetheless, despite that, 1 year later, Mr. Speaker, the Dominican Labour Party made its first move. It gave its first signal that it was serious about serving and representing the people of this country. It was serious about how the actions it could take to improve the well-being of the working class in Dominica, Mr. Speaker. In 2001, Mr. Speaker, that is 1 year after taking office, Mr. Speaker, the income tax, the threshold, was first increased from $12,000 to $15,000. Under the original act, Mr. Speaker, which was set in 1983, the income tax threshold was stood at $12,000. The first bracket of tax was $18,000 wide, and the rate was 20%. The second bracket, $30,000, and with a rate of 30%. Everything above that was taxed at a rate of 40%. So the first thing the Labour Party did, the first little move, remember it couldn't do much at that time because of the economic state of the country, was to increase the tax threshold to $15,000. So essentially, everybody got an extra $250 tax-free every month, Mr. Speaker. Despite the challenging economic times, Mr. Speaker, 1 year later, the Labour Party moved again, and that was to implement the deductible on student loans, Mr. Speaker. So we brought in the deductible for the interest paid on student loans at a maximum of $5,000 in January of 2001, Mr. Speaker. Again, little moves, but meaningful. Still, mostly showing the intent of the Labour Party to get to the real tax reform that will be able to benefit our everyday working man, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, not much was done for the next couple of years. But if we had to remember these times, as the Honorable Dr. Henderson rightly mentioned, we had a very challenging time during that time. We entered into the austerity measures, the IMF austerity measures, where we had to basically have civil servants take pay cuts and all those different things. So there's not much we could have done in terms of giving additional relief during that couple of years there, Mr. Speaker. And then, unfortunately, we had the passing of our Prime Minister, that is Pierre Charles, in 2004. And we then brought in our Honorable Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Roosevelt Skerrit, at the tender age of 31 in January of 2004. But it only took the Honorable Prime Minister 1.5 years in office to announce and to show his strong plans for tax reform in Dominica, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the budget presentation of July 2005, the Honorable Prime Minister informed the country that we would be transitioning from the range of consumer taxes. So we had the consumption tax, we had the sales tax, we had the hotel occupancy tax and the entertainment tax. All these would have been set aside and would be replaced with one VAT tax, Mr. Speaker. So that was introduced in March 2006. So just 2 years after taking office, we had a major tax reform moving from all these various taxes into the VAT system. And at that time, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister signaled his intention to continue with major tax reforms, all towards improving the well-being of the working class people in Dominica, Mr. Speaker. And so doing, Mr. Speaker, in 2007, this Prime Minister announced a 3-year plan, a 3-year tax reform plan, starting in January of 2008. Major tax reform, Mr. Speaker, that will give meaningful benefit to our people. And ironically, Mr. Speaker, in 2008, if you recall, that was around the onset of the international financial crisis. So later on in that year, the whole world was experiencing some serious challenges. We had all these banks, all these financial institutions in particular, shutting down, originating from the housing sector in the US. So things were hard internationally. Nonetheless, in January of 2008, the income tax threshold was increased from $15,000 to $18,000. So an additional $3,000 became tax-free from people's salary, Mr. Speaker. As well, the tax band, the first tax band was widened from $18,000 to $20,000 at that time. So we have an increase in the tax threshold and we have a widening of the initial tax band to $20,000. Also, the first tax band that was originally charged at 20% tax rate, that was reduced to 18%, Mr. Speaker. So we had 3 things happening in January of 2008. We had the increase in the tax threshold, we had the widening of the initial tax band, and we had the lowering of the income tax rate. That is money that you just basically taking away from the treasury, Mr. Speaker, and putting back in people's pocket, right at the time when it was needed most, Mr. Speaker. The initial tax rate was reduced from 20% to 18%. In the second band, the rate was reduced from 30% to 28%. And in the higher band, the rate was reduced from 40% to 38%, Mr. Speaker. So we had a 2% across the board reduction in the tax rates in January of 2008, Mr. Speaker. The following year, which is the second of the 3-year tax reform plan, we had a further increase in the tax threshold from 18,000 to 20,000. So right away, by that time, we had increased the tax threshold from 15,000 now up to $20,000. And then we had a further 2% reduction in the tax rates across the board. So we moved from 18% to 16%, from 28% to 26%, from 38% to 36%, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, in 2009, that time there we were in the real meat of the international financial crisis. The government could have said, okay, because of what is happening globally, maybe we can suspend the implementation of the tax reform over the period, but not this government, Mr. Speaker. Not under the leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister. We moved forward and we made sure that we provided material, meaningful tax benefit to our people in this country, Mr. Speaker. And the final year of the 3-year period in 2010, the final measure was implemented where we reduced the income tax rates to 15% on the first bracket, 25% on the second bracket, and 35% on the top tier, which is what pertains today, Mr. Speaker. So over that 3-year period, we saw some real meaningful measures taken to reduce the tax burden on the average citizen of this country, Mr. Speaker. And these were in a direct effort to address the high cost of living. And I have to again reiterate that after 4.5 years in office, nothing approaching that anywhere was even considered by the previous government, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in 2015, which was our next move, we increased the income tax threshold from $20,000 to $25,000. That was a $5,000 increase. And at the same time, the mortgage interest deductible, that was at $15,000 from the time the act was enacted in January of 1983. For the first time, that was increased. It was increased from $15,000 to $25,000, a $10,000 increase in the mortgage interest deductible. So we had two things happening, two primary things happening in 2015. We increased the income tax threshold and we increased the mortgage deductible. So there is a combination of $15,000 that could be written off from the income tax. Mr. Speaker, that is just, I mean, you're going through there right now. I remember being an employee at the National Bank, and I can remember the anticipation that was ahead of the budget address, because I was always there waiting to see what good is going to come out, what benefits going to come, how much more are going to stay in my pocket, how much less tax I can pay. And I have to admit, Mr. Speaker, that the Labour Party government didn't often disappoint. There was always something coming in for the average working person. And that was in 2015, Mr. Speaker, and if we can recall again, that was the year that we got hit by Tropical Storm Erica. So it's like it's almost like it's divine intervention, inspirational, where the government always was able to provide meaningful tax relief, meaningful adjustments at a time when the country needed it most. So we had that at the beginning of the financial crisis. We again have that when we got hit, in the same year we got hit by Tropical Storm Erica, Mr. Speaker. The next move was in January of 2018, so that is 3 years later. And that was when we moved the income tax threshold up from $25,000 to $40,000, which is where it stands today, Mr. Speaker. And that 2018, if I have to mention it again, that measure took effect in January of 2018, but it was announced in the July budget address. The budget address was on the 27th of July in that year, Mr. Speaker, and that was just a couple of weeks before we got hit by Hurricane Maria, which was on the 18th of September of 2017. I don't know if I need to again explain it that, but it's like really just inspirational to see that the Dominican Labour Party continue to step up and continue to provide meaningful relief to its people. When it's like you could foresee that, okay, we're going to need something to continue to boost up our people, to help our people overcome another major challenge that will be coming their way, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in January of 2020, we had another milestone, Mr. Speaker. The first thing is the mortgage interest deductible was increased from $25,000 to $30,000. So we started off at $15,000, and it was then doubled to $40,000. That was the first thing. The second thing is we had a second mortgage added on, where if you have a second mortgage paying a second home, you could claim $15,000 deductible on that second mortgage. So we had a total increase here of $15,000, $5,000 on the first mortgage, $20,000. So $5,000 on the first mortgage increase, $15,000 new on a second mortgage. Mr. Speaker, so that in itself was again meaningful tax reform, and that was announced in the budget address of 2019. At the end of 2019, Mr. Speaker, was the start of COVID-19 pandemic. So in January 2020, we got tax relief again at the onset of COVID-19 pandemic. If we recall, and Honorable Henderson mentioned it a while ago, the high costs that the government incurred at that time, in terms of having to do health facilities, in terms of having to put people that were affected in hotels and having to care for them, and having to procure testing kits and the whole range of things that went along with the pandemic period, Mr. Speaker. In the midst of all that, the country got meaningful tax reform, where people could be able to keep more of their money in their pocket, Mr. Speaker. In 2021, Mr. Speaker, we we started off we increased the threshold on the student loans, the student loan deductible, where previously it was set at $5,000. That was done in 2003. But it was done to a maximum of $5,000. That was entirely removed in 2021, Mr. Speaker. So in 2021, you could deduct all the interest that you paid on a student loan. So the benefit of that at that point, I guess, is up to the level of interest that you're paying on a student loan. And again, I have to reiterate that that was still in the middle of a pandemic. The government, it's almost like as if you cannot sleep well until you believe that, okay, I need to do something more for the people of Dominica. It's like there must be something else I can do to give an additional benefit, an additional relief, an additional heads up to the people of Dominica. And you know, it's just remarkable to see the journey that this government had went through over those years, Mr. Speaker. And if you're listening to people out there, and the reason I wanted to outline these things like that, Mr. Speaker, because if you're listening to people out there, you'll get the impression like this government hasn't done anything to address the cost of living. It's like almost like we're just sitting down on our hands, Mr. Speaker, and watching prices go. But if you're looking, if anybody paying attention to what's happening internationally, prices have gone up everywhere. And the reason behind these prices going up has had nothing to do with us. Okay, we've experienced pandemics, we've gotten wars, and all these different things that keep on driving up the cost of goods and so on. And we are the ones basically importing those higher prices. And the government has been there as much as possible, holding the strain, keeping the prices down. And then instead of everybody coming and saying, you know, thanking the government for the significant step it has taken to address the cost of living, you have a minority of people criticizing and trying to make it appear like the government is not paying attention to the cost of living and the government is not doing enough to address the cost of living. And I mean, like, what more could be expected of the government at that time, Mr. Speaker? But nonetheless, as we said already, we don't sleep rest. We doesn't sleep comfortable until we know that we have done everything we can and we have turned every stone that we can, Mr. Speaker. So in 2022, and that was towards the back end of the pandemic, when we still had the Russia-Ukraine war going on, and I think we had the Israel-Palestinian war going on at that time. So we had major inflation in 2022. I mean, inflation reached 15–16%, I think, at one point. It was bad, Mr. Speaker. It was bad. But nonetheless, in 2022, we added property insurance premium deductible up to a maximum of $8,000. So again, even amidst all that international chaos and uncertainty, we again did measures to improve the tax condition in the country, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, in 2025, well, prior to 2025, we had 31 goods listed as either having no VAT or no duty. And we had 5 of those goods having actually no VAT and duty. And these were essential goods, goods that the everyday person would have to buy on an ongoing, regular basis because that is what you had in your kitchen and so on. So we had 31 of those goods. But in 2025, the government added 29 more to that list, Mr. Speaker, almost doubling the list. 26 items were added to the no VAT list, Mr. Speaker. 11 items were added to the no duty list. And between those two, we had 8 of them having no VAT and no duty. So we had an original 5 with no VAT and no duty. Now we added another 8, so we ended up with a total of 13 essential items having 0 VAT and 0 duty in this country. So if you go in a supermarket and you look at the price of an item, the price of an everyday item, there's a very high probability that the government is getting nothing from that in terms of taxes. What you're paying for is essentially the cost of the item and the seller's profit margin. You cannot in any way associate the cost of that if you consider it to be high with any action that the government has taken, because what the government has done is get rid of the duty, get rid of the VAT on all the necessary items, all the essential items that we use in our household every day, Mr. Speaker. In 2020, the additional items that were added were originally done for a period of 6 months, and obviously these are still going on. So we had them extended after the 6 months, and as the Minister of Finance just explained 2 days ago, we are further extending the concessions on those goods. 6 months. So again, we're maintaining this relief and the support to our people because the prices are still high, Mr. Speaker. And that takes us to now. That takes us to now where we have just presented probably the most significant budget of our times, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I always dreamed of having to live in a country where we don't have to pay any taxes at all. I mean, like everybody else, I don't want to pay tax. You know, I want to keep my money. I work hard for my money. I want it to stay in my pocket. You know, I understand the state has to get something because we have to pay the police, we have to pay the teachers, we have to build the roads, we have to, you know, we have to run the country. And Dr. Henderson mentioned as well that we have to ensure that we provide power to our people. So the state has to get some revenue, but as much as possible, I want to keep the money I work hard for. And in 2026, I think we come in pretty close to allowing everybody to be able to do that, to be able to keep the money that we're working hard for. A 10% flat tax rate, effectively getting rid of the 15%, getting rid of the 25%, getting rid of the 45%. Okay, and so you get your tax-free deductible of 40% income, the individual tax threshold of 40% that is in place. If you have no other deductibles, that means you don't have a mortgage or student loan or those type of things that are there. You only start paying tax on salaries above $30,000. And no matter how high you go after that, you only pay 10% of the difference. I mean, Dominica is effectively right now a tax haven. Dominica is a low tax jurisdiction. And that is a message that we have to send out there. So the people looking to live in a low tax paradise, look at Dominica. Dominica, I mean, I cannot preempt the Minister of Tourism. She's able to tell you all the beautiful things that we have to offer in the country in terms of our natural resources and so on. But I can say that if you can live in paradise and have to pay no tax, then why not? You know, you know what I'm saying? Why not, Mr. Speaker? 10%. Mr. Speaker, one of the criticisms I have sometimes heard coming from the negative people or the doubters out there, Mr. Speaker, is that, you know, we don't do enough for the middle class in the country. We always focus on the lower income, the working class. And I mean, it is the founding principles of the Dominican Labour Party, Mr. Speaker, to uplift the least among us. And so, you know, that the criticism could probably be understandable to that effect. Mr. Speaker, there is no doubt now that with this tax reform, the middle class is getting a major boost, Mr. Speaker. Because it's the middle class and the upper class are the ones paying 25 and 45%. The lower income people already not paying any taxes. The only taxes that the lower income generally pay is VAT. And that has not changed. So reducing the interest rate to 10% flat is significantly benefiting the higher income earners, people like my former comrades who work at the bank, for example. But this is not in any way, Mr. Speaker, a bad thing. I am very happy to inform the middle class that we are giving them this tax relief because we have to open to be sincere about it. The middle class is the ones really that drive in the economic benefit in the country. The middle class is the ones that build in houses. The middle class, and when you build in a house, you have to employ people, you have to buy building material. That is the generating economic activity. The middle class is the ones buying vehicles. In Dominica, we like our RAV4. You know, and you don't want too much of an old vehicle. We like our Toyota RAV4, for example. It's the middle class that can afford that. You know, when a lower income person buying a vehicle, we look for something cheap. You know, this tax reform, Mr. Speaker, will allow the middle class to be able to build or expand their house, will be able to allow them to be able to go and afford that RAV4, Mr. Speaker, because they have the extra money in their pocket. And when you buy the RAV4, you have to buy gas, you have to buy tire, you have to pay a mechanic to service it, you have to do so many things that continue to generate economic activity around that vehicle. You have to pay insurance, you have to pay license, and I mean, everything you do basically is a whole economic system around it, Mr. Speaker. All that is needed to generate the economic activity. And the Minister of Finance mentioned that this I will get to the non-compounding aspect of it, but I don't want to miss out on that. The overall cost of the tax relief that we are providing this year costing about $43.5 million. That is the initial assessment of what it will cost the government to implement these tax measures, Mr. Speaker. But we have to bear in mind that when we increase people's purchasing power, when you give that tax cut, especially in a generally lower income economy like ours, the majority of that money is again spent. There is not a high percentage of savings that we can expect to come from that, Mr. Speaker. And when you spend the money, especially if when you spend the money in the economy, the government will get back tax revenue from that through VAT. So we're giving it up on the income tax side, but we're picking up a good bit of it through VAT, Mr. Speaker. The general assessment is that the government will pick up anywhere between 30 to 60% back through VAT, Mr. Speaker. So the real cost of these economic benefits that we're giving there is somewhat lower. Happy to inform the Minister of Finance that the real cost to the country will be lower than the $43.5 million. Probably, let's just say, conservatively, half of that. The other side of it is that the empirical data also suggests that if you have a marginal propensity to consume, and I can explain that, the marginal propensity to consume is for if you have $100, how much of that will you spend versus how much of that you're going to save. So we can add savings as one of the things that having a leakage that is drawing money away from the economy. So you have savings. Also, if you take some of that money to pay existing loans, that can draw money away from the economy. And I say existing loans, not new loans, because if you take a new loan, then you're going to create economic activity around that new loan because you're going to spend that money, and that spend that money, government will get it VAT. You will employ people, and those people they will buy in the shop, and those people there will pay VAT and so on. So it's not new loans, it's existing loans because that money gone already, that money is spent already, that's already in circulation. So if you take some of that money to pay existing loans, that will draw money away from the economy. If you use some of that money to buy overseas, maybe like if you go on Amazon and this type of things there, that in itself again will draw money away from the economy. And if you take some of that money to travel, like as a tourist, and you spend that money overseas, then that in itself will draw money. So you would not be able to recover everything that you're giving in terms of a tax cut. But conservatively, most economists estimate that there is a marginal propensity to consume of about 80%. But let's just say conservatively, we're looking at 50% because Dominicans like to buy online. And that is another thing that we should be mindful of. That is why we continue to encourage people to spend in the local economy, Mr. Speaker. Because when you spend buying local, you're keeping the money here, you're generating economic activity, and ultimately it comes back around to you. So the more you can spend local, is the more you can build up our economy, is the more benefits, is the more the government can afford to put good teachers in your school to teach your children. Is the more we can afford to fix the roads. You drive in your vehicle and you complain about the road, take your dollar and spend it locally so the government can get a tax to be able to block that road. With everything you spending, you want to go and spend overseas, you want to buy everything online. That is money you're taking out, you're drawing out of our economy. So spend locally. Now, if you see we can spend locally at the expected rate, the economic benefit from the $43.5 million that we receive in those tax cuts there, that can be multiplied 4 times, approximately 4 times in the economy, Mr. Speaker. So the economic benefit from a $43 million tax cut could be about $150 to $170 million. That is the size it can help the economy grow, Mr. Speaker. So we're getting some of the monies back through the tax revenue, VAT, and then we are able to facilitate growth in the economy of approximately 4 times the cost of the measure, Mr. Speaker. So that is I do not want anybody to get the impression that when we're doing those types of measures, we are not thinking of it from a higher macro perspective. We're not doing things that we cannot afford to do. We're not doing things that we cannot sustain, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the other major part of what was announced in this year's budget address is the end of the tax compounding on imports, Mr. Speaker. So we will speak a little bit about that, Mr. Speaker. Now, the real benefit from that measure will be on goods where you pay excise tax. In Dominica, not many goods attracting excise tax. But ironically, one of the most talked about vehicles is one of the most prominent goods that have an excise tax. Excise tax of about 28% generally is applied to vehicles. So for everybody's clear understanding, I will just briefly walk through how that is calculated and what that benefit really means. Because some people might be hearing it and they don't really understand what you're talking about in terms of removing the compounding. So when you import a vehicle, we'll use a vehicle as an example because it has all those different tax aspects to it. When you import a vehicle and you have the CIF, that is the cost of the vehicle, the insurance to bring down the vehicle, and the freight you pay to transport the vehicle down, that is your CIF. So you have the CIF. On that CIF, so let's just use approximately 10,000 US as a general guide. About 10,000 US will be able to give us our 10-year-old RAV4, Mr. Speaker. So we have about 10,000 US in terms of CIF. You're going to pay 40% duty on that 10,000 US. You're going to pay approximately 5.5% in terms of port charges and so on, Mr. Speaker. So that is about 45.5% in the first aspect of taxes that is applied to the CIF. So the cost you have right here before you is already increased by 45.5%. Then that is where you now applying the excise tax of 28%, Mr. Speaker. So 28% is not added onto the cost, the CIF of the vehicle. 28% is charged on the cost plus the 45.5% that we had added earlier on. So then the 28% is magnified as opposed to if it was just being applied rightfully to only the cost of the vehicle. So then you have the 45.5 plus 28% on top of everything. And then it doesn't end there, Mr. Speaker. It goes further. You have VAT at 15% added to the cost of everything again that was calculated before. So we already had 28% excise tax on duty, and now we have VAT on top of everything. So, Mr. Speaker, you can understand why generally you will see like somebody buying a vehicle at a relatively little bit of US, and then by the time you do check it, the cost of the vehicle is 40,000 that you and then where it come. This is because of the way the tax was being compounded. And the government recognized like we need to modernize the system and move away from that measure. So what is proposed right now is that every step of the process, the taxes will only be calculated on the CIF of the import. So we're not putting 28% excise tax on top the 45% that we would have paid for duty and the custom charges. And then we're not putting VAT on the excise tax and on the duty. So this is a significant benefit to the importer, Mr. Speaker. And as an example, Mr. Speaker, if you imported a $10,000 vehicle, by my rough estimate, you should get off the top savings of about 8,000 EC, Mr. Speaker. 8,000 EC from an average vehicle that you would import. Now that $8,000 is $8,000 you can use to insure the vehicle, to license it, to make sure it is well serviced, it is ready to be on the road and noteworthy. That $8,000 is perhaps $8,000 less loan you need to take, Mr. Speaker. And with that less loan, that means less installments have to come out from your pocket every month. But you say, and you have the same vehicle, yeah? Less installment coming out from your pocket every month. That is more money you get to keep, more money you have to buy bread for your children, more money you have to pay light bill. Right? If you, like a lot of us, Mr. Speaker, we like our pickups, and we have a large farming community in this country, so we like our pickup. If you buy a 10-year pickup, generally you could save in the ballpark of between $17,000 to $20,000 on the cost of that vehicle through this measure, Mr. Speaker. So we're not talking about like abstract or phantom changes, Mr. Speaker. These are not just nice things to say in a budget presentation. This is real money, material money that touching people's pockets, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, still on the taxes, in 2014, I separated it because I wanted to deal with income versus corporate, individuals versus corporate. In 2014, the government reduced the corporate tax rate from 30% to 25%. Now, to put that in context, Mr. Speaker, in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, only Anguilla has a lower corporate tax rate than us in Dominica. The Anguillan tax rate is 0%. But we also have to be mindful that Anguilla is a different type of economy than us, because Anguilla is the property of the United Kingdom. So, they have that different relationship. The only other Eastern Caribbean currency country that is on par with us is Antigua. Antigua also has a 25% corporate tax rate. The other sister countries, Grenada, 28%, St. Lucia, 30%, St. Vincent, Montserrat, also at 40%. And then we have St. Kitts and Nevis, which are at 33%. So not only do we have some of the lowest tax rates in terms of personal income tax rates in the region, we also have very competitive corporate tax rates, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, to summarize our efforts in terms of reducing the taxes, Mr. Speaker, let us look at it. The tax rates over the 26 years we started off with, the measures that we have taken, the tax rates have gone down from 20, 30, and 40% to now 10% flat across the board. The threshold for the non-tax threshold on individuals, that increased from $12,000 in 2000 to $30,000 today, Mr. Speaker. Over the time, we have added a second mortgage deductible, taking it from, well, it wasn't there, to $15,000, Mr. Speaker. The mortgage deductible on the first home, that increased from $15,000 to $30,000. So that has been doubled over the time we have been in office, Mr. Speaker. When I say we, I mean my government. I wasn't there. We added student loan deductible. At first that was $5,000. Now there is no limit on that, Mr. Speaker. We added home insurance, the premium paid on home insurance, that has been added to up to $8,000 tax deductible. The interest paid on student loans, there is no limit on that, Mr. Speaker. The premiums paid for health insurance, Mr. Speaker, that has been added as a deductible, and there is no limit on that, Mr. Speaker. Import duty reform, we just went over that, Mr. Speaker. We're removing the compounding impact of the calculation for duty, and we have reduced the corporate tax rate from 30% to 25%. Mr. Speaker, I don't think after people hear me, anybody should be saying that this government hasn't made every attempt to address the cost of living, Mr. Speaker. We have gone out of our way, despite all the challenges that we have faced. We have been hit with natural disasters, we have been hit with pandemics, we have been hit with financial crisis, we have wars taking place all over the place that is impacting us directly. We have faced the challenges of climate change, where we have to be spending so much to be dredging rivers in my constituency every year. Despite all these numerous challenges, government has remained steadfast in providing meaningful tax reform and relief to the people of the country. Mr. Speaker, our efforts didn't end with just tax reform, Mr. Speaker. We'll mention a couple of the non-tax measures that have been implemented over the time this government has been in office, Mr. Speaker. The first, let us look at the minimum wage. Mr. Speaker, the minimum wage was implemented, adjusted in 1989. So that was during the second term of the Freedom Party. And nobody touched the minimum wage until 2008. Now, when I looked at the 1989 rates, I agree, maybe $1 could go a little further at the time. But I still find it hard to understand how in 1989, a helper that was getting meals could have been paid only $1 an hour, Mr. Speaker. That means you would potentially be getting $40 a week, $160 a month. That is indentured servant slavery type level wages, Mr. Speaker. And that was what prevailed until this government addressed it in 2008, Mr. Speaker. At that time, generally, the highest one was $3, and that was paid to cashiers, but the average wage at that time was approximately $2, Mr. Speaker. The government addressed the minimum wage in 2008. It again went back to increase the minimum wages in 2021, and most recently in 2025. While on that, Mr. Speaker, well, in last year's address, the government announced the intention to address the minimum wage in the last budget that was presented in July of 2025. And I would have to give a big thank you and recognize the members of the Minimum Wage Advisory Board that was chaired by Mr. Badwell. Now, that board was convened in rapid order following the budget address, and they were given a very tight deadline because they were given October 1st for us to have new minimum wages in effect. So they only had effectively the rest of the summer to do the economic analysis and come up with a meaningful recommendation for us to increase the minimum wage. And they were able to keep to that timeline and submit a meaningful recommendation to the cabinet within the time frame, Mr. Speaker. So that was an example of real patriots giving up their time, freely giving up their time towards making sure that we can advance the agenda of this country, Mr. Speaker. So I really want to thank all the members. I have met with them and thank them personally, but just for the whole country to know that, you know, these people, we need more of those types of people in the system, Mr. Speaker. The increases in the minimum wage, Mr. Speaker, this took effect in the 1st of December, 2025. What we did here was we had average increases of between 20 to 40% being put in place at that time, effectively taking the average for most sectors from $7.24 an hour up to about $9 an hour. The overall average was increased to approximately $9.14 an hour in terms of minimum wage. So that brought us on par and slightly above the average in the CARICOM, Mr. Speaker. So as of right now, Dominica is not behind in terms of the rate, the minimum rate, Mr. Speaker. Another non-tax measure that is worth mentioning, Mr. Speaker, different things that we're doing to keep putting money in people's pocket. We have various things like free fertilizer. Up to yesterday, while I was on my 1 day preparing for today, I had to be going downstairs and giving people free fertilizer. We've given free fertilizer to farmers, free tools and equipment, free farming supplies. This, if the government does not help with that, the people have to take out more in their pocket to buy those things. The digital economy grants, we've given those to help people modernize their businesses. Small business. As the Minister for Small Business, I must mention the significant support that we've given to our people through the small business unit. Speaking of that, I have to again mention the Aid Bank and the staff of the Aid Bank for excellent management of the loan facility that the government put in their care towards providing soft concessionary financing to small businesses in Dominica, Mr. Speaker. That facility, $27.8 million, performed excellently. It was, as of March 2026, it was fully drawn down. And that's because of the success of that facility that inspired the government to now go back on a new facility at $19 million. So we'll be putting an additional $19 million at the Aid Bank on the concessionary terms. Generally 3.5%, 10 years term, 6 months grace period. And Mr. Speaker, that goes a long way. When you have to compare it with probably 8% in the average commercial bank, a 3.5% rate is a significant concession, Mr. Speaker. So we want to On behalf of the small business community, I sincerely thank the government for these measures, Mr. Speaker. Beyond the small businesses, one of the most far-reaching measures that were impacted is the non-contributors pension. In 2016, the government implemented the non-contributors pension for persons 70 years and over. So these are people that would not have paid anything towards, well, anything meaningful towards the Social Security, where they would have then been able to benefit from a pension. And in 2023, that was increased by 5%. The amount granted through that measure was increased by 5%, whilst at the same time, the age to qualify for that pension was reduced from 70 to 65 years. So again, this is money that the government directly put into the pockets of some of our most vulnerable people, Mr. Speaker. Because at 65, 70 years, you don't have any Social Security coming in. Probably you don't have much support from family members around you. Life can be hard, to put it mildly. But the government put these people in a position where somebody can stand up by the bar and say, Kasani, come and take a beer. You understand? So that put a little bit of pride, a little bit of dignity in a man's pocket, when he can, at the end of the month, he can have a $315 in his pocket and he can tell his bar rep, look a beer. Oh, by the way, the people have called you, I want a beer too. Eh? I don't mind, I drinking beer too. So, Mr. Speaker, for this presentation, I think that will generally wrap up. I want to wrap up the measures, the many and varied measures that this government has undertaken to help our citizens, our people, deal with high cost of living. Okay? Please let it not be said that this government is not doing nothing with respect to the cost of living, because the reality is so far from the truth. And the people that pushing that, I mean, shame on them. You know what I mean, shame on them. Honestly speaking, I don't know how you can look yourself in the mirror when you just blatantly, you know, the evidence is right there. The evidence has been laid on the table. This is our record. This is what we have done, and we are very proud of it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just before I wrap up, I would just want to touch on one or two matters. From the ministry, the cabinet has approved the issuance of work and residency permit cards, Mr. Speaker. Now, these will replace the little paper permits that we now issue in
10 more minutes.
Yes, Mr. I'll wrap up by that time, Mr. Speaker. I expect to wrap up. This will replace the paper permits that we are now issuing to people who are here on work permits or who are here on residency permits. Now, the benefit to that is multiple, Mr. Speaker. First of all, the security features that you will get on those documents, you cannot have it you don't have it on the paper document. So the first thing is you will have your picture. The picture will be on the document. You will have a QR code. You will have a signature. So the authorities can stop you and be able to get a valid government ID from you to show that to confirm your legal status and your identity on the island, Mr. Speaker. Now, it might not appear significant to those of us that have a driver's license or have a passport or social security card, but try to imagine, for example, you're an immigrant, you maybe move here as a child with your family, you go into school still, so you're not working, you cannot get a social security card, you're underage, you're not driving, you don't have a driver's license, and maybe the amount of time you've been here on island, your passport has expired. So you're essentially living in the country legally because you have a valid paperwork permit, but you're on island without a proper and valid ID in your pocket, which makes it difficult for you to do banking transactions and be able to just go by MoneyGram and give them a valid ID, and for you to be able to live a little bit of comfortably in the country. So these cards, Mr. Speaker, will help alleviate some of that. The cards will also help reducing forgery, Mr. Speaker, because the paper, the lack of security features and so on the paper permits, it has encouraged people to try to fraudulently duplicate those documents and pass them on to people, because all you're seeing is a name, you don't have a picture to be able to confirm it, and these people try to come in at the airport using a work permit that is really a forgery. So with the card system, that will help curtail those forgery attempts, Mr. Speaker. And in general, it's cool. You know, you have a QR code, you can just scan it and you'll be able to see the person's information, so the police can do that, and anybody can be able to do that. And it's modernizing the whole system. That is in line with our whole digital economy, digitalizing the system, and, you know, bringing us up to standard in terms of having a more modern society, Mr. Speaker. So we welcome the issuance of the work permits and the residency cards, and these we expect should be able to take effect from the 1st of October this year, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, still on the ministry matters, I am happy to announce to the small business community that the cabinet has approved the small medium enterprise bill, development bill, the MSME, the micro, small and medium sized development bill, Mr. Speaker. That has been a long time coming. And we expect that we will be able to bring this bill before the House, hopefully at the next sitting. If not, then at the next opportune time, Mr. Speaker, because the bill is ready to be presented to the House and enacted. The benefits of that bill, it will help with the growth and development of the small business community. It will help us to be able to better focus our measures in terms of targeted to help with the promotion and development. It will help standardize the understanding of where a small business really lies in the country, either your micro, small, or medium. So when you're looking to have economic measures, you can have it more targeted at the exact people that you want it to reach, Mr. Speaker. So we will be taking a major step forward with the implementation of the Small Medium Enterprise Development Bill, Mr. Speaker. From a constituency's perspective, the people of Koliho, Dublin and Biosh, I just want you to know that the government is very aware of the need for us to continue our housing program. Everything doesn't come to you one time, but it will be coming. In the meantime, I would want to say a big thank you to the government for making available the lots at Patma Pier. We recently issued 10 lots to constituents at very concessionary rates of $5 per square foot. Now, Mr. Speaker, these are lots that are valued at approximately $12 a square foot. Very scenic, excellent view of the Caribbean Sea, good breeze, quiet neighborhood, valued at around $12. And $12 is probably conservative. But the government is selling that to the constituents at $5. $5 a square foot. So if you buy in, as an example, if you buy in a 5,000 square foot lot, Mr. Speaker, the normal cost for that would be $60,000 at $12. But you're paying $25,000 for it. So that is a $45,000 benefit to you off the bat right away. The government is effectively taking $45,000 from the treasury and giving you in your pocket and say, look, for it to start your house. Right there. If you buy in a smaller property, $4,000, 4,000 by 12, that is $48,000, and you'll be paying $20,000, that is $28,000 benefit off the bat. You can use that and go and buy a vehicle. It wouldn't be a RAV4, but you can get something. Mr. Speaker, so I just finished with Koliho for now. If we're looking at Dublin, I want to thank the Honorable Minister for Sports. Recently, we were able to put some brand new lights on the Dublin playing field. We were able to upgrade our lights. One thing, the Minister of Sport, when I go to the Minister of Sport, I'll tell him, okay, we need to do that. I don't know, I think he probably have one or two friends in Dublin, because whenever I tell him we need to do that, he on the ball, he moves, right? He likes the community, and Dublin is an excellent community, and I can't blame him for liking the village. Dublin is a cultural activity. Dublin has a long and proud sporting history. Okay, Dublin has produced some of the top cricketers in the country. For 4 years in a row, running, Dublin has been dominating the Premier League. So So, giving us some modern lights on the playing field, Mr. Speaker, that is the least we can do. And so, we are very thankful for the new lights, the Honorable Minister of Sports. Thankfully, Mr. Speaker, I was also able to bless the Dublin football team recently with a new water pump that will be able to drive the irrigation system. Because I had a conversation with the president of the Dominican Football Association, and he assured me that if we can improve the lighting and so on the Dublin playing field, we should be able to get more games. So hopefully, I mean, we're already getting a good bit of games, I have to admit, but hopefully we can get even more games down in Dublin, because we have an excellent pitch, we have new irrigation system that come in, we have new lights and everything, and so on. So, you know, we're rolling on gas, Mr. Speaker. On gas. We're not cooking on coals, we're cooking on gas. With respect to the Dublin community, we recently had a town hall, an agriculture, Ministry of Agriculture town hall. We met with the farmers down in Dublin. And that again, Mr. Speaker, was held at the pavilion in Dublin. And that pavilion is something that through the grace of the Prime Minister, we were able to make some serious improvements too recently. And so right now the pavilion is serving as a de facto community center. That is where we hold in our nice little meetings. We have a good, comfortable environment. And so we had a meeting at the Dublin pavilion. And the Minister of Agriculture addressed one of the most pressing issues of the farming community in the area, and that is the irrigation system at Milton. Do I need to get time? 5 minutes?
2 more minutes.
Okay, let's see how far we can go with 2 minutes, Mr. Speaker. So the irrigation system, as we know, recently we had this DOMCREP program launched, Mr. Speaker, and that is, let me see, DOMCREP, that is, anyway, that is a system that is in collaboration with the OECS Commission, and it is being funded by the European Union, but $17.2 or so million under that program going towards helping build resilience and so on in the country. So under that program, it is very likely that we'll be able to get the Syndicate Milton program irrigation system funded, Mr. Speaker. So hopefully we can see that come to fruition shortly. So we have hope, we live in hope and expectations that the irrigation system will be addressed up in the Syndicate area, Mr. Speaker. In BIOSH, we have some very exciting news. One of the long-standing issues in BIOSH is the septic tank issue, Mr. Speaker. I came into office, and that was one of the first things that he told me, and I was determined to try to address it. And thankfully, with the support, okay.
Mr. Speaker, I move for an additional 5 minutes for the member to wrap up.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the Honorable Pinard be given an additional 5 minutes. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Honorable, you are given an additional 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, colleagues. Okay, so with the strong support of the Minister for the Environment, now the Minister for the Environment came down to BIOSH with a whole team, and we went house to house, looking at the situation and trying to determine how we can address it. And thankfully, he has this biospace project. Now, that is a project that is currently operating in the Soufriere area, because they have a similar challenge with respect to be able to get the soil, the type of soil is not conducive to like soakaway and septic and this type of things there. So under that bio project, so it's the bio project that is funded by the European Union. Sorry, so the DOMCREP is being funded by the CDB. Yes, under the 5Cs, yes. Correct me, man. Okay, thank you for that correction, Mr. Speaker. Now, under that bio space, we are thankful for the fact that the Minister of the Environment has set aside a number of septic tanks for us, Mr. Speaker. Now, these septic tanks, these artificial septic tanks, they have the capacity of about 500 gallons, and they have to be inspected every 12 to 18 months and so on, and we have to replace the filters on them approximately twice a year. But the fact is, they providing us with a very viable solution to the septic situation we have in Biosh. And the good news I have to report is that these tanks are here on island, and we expect that they will be brought down to Dubla, and to Biosh, sorry, sometime next week. So we can see some in the very near future, we can see the issue being addressed. So as I wrap up, Mr. Speaker, let me just say thank you to the many supporters in the Collier constituency, especially those that always make themselves available when I call. And I will not go into calling names, because when you call names invariably, you do not call everybody, and then those you do not call, they're feeling bad. So the strategy, the best thing, don't call them, just thank everybody. I will thank the staff at my constituency office. Now, these are ladies that will work tirelessly through the weekend, through the night when they have to, but they have to make sure that whatever it is we plan, it is executed to perfection. And so I really want to thank them for the continuous support that I receive from them. And the ministry, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the staff of the Ministry of Labor. Dr. Anderson said I can't call her my PS, so I have to say thank the PS of Labor for her strong support. I was very fortunate, Mr. Speaker, to have Miss Joseph as my first PS, because Miss Joseph is a veteran in the system. When you're coming in new into the public service, where everything you know is private sector, it was very, very beneficial to have somebody that knows the system inside out like Miss Joseph. So I was truly appreciative of her and the assistance she's able to give me, the strong support that she's able to give me as the PS in the Ministry of Labor. And I want to thank the staff in general. Their busier time is coming up, because we soon go into the period where we'll be hosting the TV Village Creole. They have proposed some exciting changes to TV Village Creole coming up in the end of the month. So I think everybody can look forward to having an even bigger and better TVK 2026. I hope to see everybody there. My comrades and colleagues, I want to thank the Prime Minister for his continued guidance, his continued support, his continued mentorship. Since I've been here, I've learned a lot from listening and being around the Prime Minister, and so it is a true joy to be learning from him, my cabinet colleagues, and everybody else. Thank you very much.
Mr. Speaker, I move that this Honorable House be suspended until 7:30 this evening.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the House be suspended until 7 p.m. this evening. 7:30 p.m. this evening. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. House stands suspended until 7:30 p.m. this evening.